The story begins with Alicia sitting regally upon an ornate, high-backed throne, her small frame swallowed by the plush upholstery as she brings a teacup to her lips with a knowing, sharp gaze. This young girl, the eldest daughter of the prestigious and powerful Williams family, possesses striking pitch-black hair and piercing golden eyes that mark her as the most beautiful girl in the world. Though she resides in the body of a 7-year-old, a profound change has occurred within her. Memories of a past life have flooded her consciousness, revealing the shocking truth that she has been reincarnated into her favorite otome game. Specifically, she has become the very villainess she once admired from afar, a lady known for her merciless tongue and strong-mindedness, even as she bullied the game's heroine. Rather than fearing this destiny, the child embraces it with a surge of exhilaration, leaping into the air and shouting her joy at being reborn as a villainess. In her previous life, the narrator found the game's heroine insufferable, viewing her pure and angelic smiles as mere tools to toy with the prince's heart. This heroine, a commoner who defied social norms to enter a magic academy reserved for aristocrats, was celebrated as a good little girl who only spoke kindly, a persona that the narrator found deeply distasteful. In contrast, the villainous Alicia was arrogant to the point of shocking her own family, only opening her mouth to complain or express her disdain. Determined to surpass the original Alicia's reputation, the reincarnated girl vows to become the greatest villainess in history, someone whose name will never be forgotten. She understands that to reach the pinnacle of villainy, she cannot simply rely on her lineage. She must become physically strong and intellectually superior. Her transformation begins the very next morning, shocking her maid, Rose, by waking up early and offering a cheerful greeting, something the original Alicia never would have done. She bids farewell to her former self, resolved to work harder than anyone else. Emerging into the morning light, she observes 3 young boys training with wooden swords in the courtyard. These are her brothers, the eldest 12-year-old Albert, the second son, 10-year-old Alan, and the third, 10-year-old Henry. They are also capture targets from the game world, destined for their own paths of greatness. When Alicia approaches them and demands to be taught swordsmanship, her brothers react with skepticism and amusement. Henry scoffs, believing it to be a passing whim, while Alan warns her that she likely won't last a single day. Albert, however, sets a daunting challenge to test her resolve. She must complete 100 sit-ups and 50 push-ups every single day for a week before he will even consider training her. He assumes the physical strain will break her spirit, but Alicia meets his gaze with fierce determination, demanding that they not look down on her. She plunges into her training immediately, her small body trembling and sweating as she pushes through the agonizing reps of push-ups and sit-ups. Despite the lack of muscle and the sheer difficulty of the task, she refuses to yield, driven by her singular goal of becoming the world's #1 villainess. While she builds her physical strength, Alicia also turns her attention to the family's massive library. In this world, magic is a privilege reserved for aristocrats, and the Williams family is renowned for their mastery of dark magic, one of the 5 great elemental attributes alongside light, water, wind, and fire. Although she is gifted, she knows she must practice to perfect her craft. Frustrated by her initial inability to find specific magic books in the sprawling library, she pivots to studying botany, devouring information on medicinal herbs, edible wild plants, and even mythical flora like trees that fly in the sky or flowers that glow in the dark. She becomes so engrossed in her studies that she nearly misses dinner, having read a staggering amount of material in a single day, a feat that suggests her talent far exceeds that of the original Alicia. As the days pass, a strange phenomenon occurs. Despite the grueling nature of her training, Alicia finds that she wakes up without any muscle aches. She suspects that her progress is being accelerated by the logic of the game world. Her physical capabilities explode. Soon, she is performing backflip somersaults and has increased her daily regimen to 500 sit-ups and 300 push-ups. Her intellectual growth is equally prodigious, as she learns to read at a pace of 10 books per hour. Her family begins to worry that she has gone crazy, noting her secretive behavior and her newfound habit of waking up early every day. When questioned about her afternoon activities, Alicia maintains a mysterious air, enjoying the fact that she is acting exactly like a villainess plotting something sinister. After a week of relentless effort, the day finally arrives for her swordsmanship training to begin. Alicia makes her way to the training grounds, where she encounters a group of the game's other capture targets visiting her brothers. Among them are Eric Hudson, a fiery redhead with fire magic, Finn Smith, a golden-haired boy with light magic, Curtis Kenwood, who uses green magic, and Gale Evans, a mysterious boy with ashen hair who commands wind magic. Finally, there is Duke Seeker, the only son of the Emperor and a master of water magic. Duke is the game's primary love interest, whose union with the heroine constitutes the happy ending. Recognizing this as a perfect opportunity to establish her villainous reputation, Alicia approaches the group. The boys are immediately struck by how small and cute she is, but Duke notices something different. She is remarkably steady and composed for a 7-year-old. Albert attempts to dismiss her presence, telling his friends that she is merely selfish and acting on a whim. He challenges her again, asking if she actually completed the physical tasks he set. With a defiant glare, Alicia grips a practice sword, her golden eyes flashing as she declares once more that they must not look down on her. Taken aback by her intensity and seriousness, Albert finally relents. Overjoyed, Alicia momentarily breaks her villainous facade to hug her brother, shouting her love for him before running off to change for training. A year passes, and Alicia's dedication never wavers. Not a single day goes by where she skips her training. Albert watches her from a window, reflecting on how his once pampered and innocent sister has transformed into a girl who swings her sword hundreds of times a day with grim focus. Duke also frequently comes to watch her, his kind eyes following her movements as she pushes herself to the limit. Alicia finds herself struggling against her own feelings, realizing that Duke is exactly her favorite type of person. However, she sternly reminds herself that she must not fall in love. She is the villainess, and romance is for the heroine. Her path is one of effort, study, and strength. She will put in whatever work is necessary to ensure she goes down in history as the greatest villainess the world has ever known. Alicia stands poised at the precipice of her destiny, a young girl of only 8 years who harbors the soul of a reincarnated woman and a singular, burning ambition to become the greatest villainess in history. 1 hour before her world shifts, she descends the grand stone steps of her family's opulent estate, her dark hair adorned with a large white ribbon and her frame clad in a pristine, layered dress. Her brother awaits her at the base of the stairs, leaning against a waiting horse-drawn carriage. He remarks on her lovely and mature appearance, noting the effort she has put into her attire for what he considers a simple visit to their friend Finn's house. Alicia brushes off his concern with the practiced grace of a noblewoman, asserting that a lady must always maintain proper attire. Internally, she mocks her past self for being awful and putting no effort into her villainous persona, but now, with her old memories returned, she refuses to spare any effort in bringing her dreams to fruition. Inside the carriage, the conversation deepens as her brother observes the profound change in her. He mentions hearing rumors that she has begun dressing herself in the mornings, a task previously handled entirely by her servant, Rosetta. Alicia deflects his curiosity with a dismissive yawn, claiming she only does what is absolutely required of her. When he presses her on what sparked this sudden earnestness, she offers only a cryptic smile, hiding her true motivation of evaluating her own capabilities through the challenges set by the world. Upon arriving at their destination, they are greeted warmly by a cheerful, fair-haired boy named Finn, who beams with an adorable smile and thanks them for coming. He invites them to the rear garden for tea and sweets, though he notes that other guests have yet to arrive. Alicia follows him toward the parlor to wait, her mind already racing with the political complexities of the social circle she intends to dominate. The atmosphere in the parlor shifts instantly from casual to suffocatingly formal as Alicia enters. She recoils in shock, her eyes widening as she realizes the room is already filled with several noble youths and, most significantly, a commanding presence that demands absolute subservience. Before her sits His Majesty the King of Duelkis, a man of sharp features and an aura of undeniable power. Alicia immediately drops into a deep, respectful bow, her heart hammering against her ribs as she wonders why the sovereign would go out of his way to meet an 8-year-old girl. The king commands her to raise her head, his gaze piercing as he reveals that he has heard a great deal about her and wishes to seize this opportunity to speak with her directly. Alicia remains tense, suspecting that this is a test from God to see if she can truly become a right and proper villainess. The king wastes no time on pleasantries, getting straight to the point by asking for her assessment of the Duelkis nation's current standing. Alicia recognizes the gravity of the question. Most would expect a child to offer empty praise for a nation that appears prosperous and stable. However, Alicia sees this as the perfect moment to showcase her villainous intellect. With a sharp glint in her eyes, she boldly declares that calling Duelkis a great nation is a misconception. She points out the rampant inequality in the distribution of wealth, explaining that the surface-level prosperity is a facade, as the country's riches are largely confined to the nobility's coffers. She warns the king that the populace holds such deep-seated contempt for the upper class that a rebellion could erupt at any moment, citing the rural village of Lorana as a prime example of such dire poverty. Intrigued by her audacity, the king leans forward, asking how she would presume to solve such a financial crisis, specifically questioning her thoughts on exploiting the gold mines in the Calvera region. Alicia counters his suggestion with a cold, calculated strategy that would make a heroine shudder. She proposes that instead of seizing Calvera directly, which currently falls under the dominion of the Lavril nation, Duelkis should covertly support Calvera's independence. By doing so, they would avoid a direct confrontation with Lavril while earning a massive debt of gratitude from the new nation. This would place Duelkis in the perfect position to establish political dominance and rake in profits through exclusive trading rights. The king lets out a soft, impressed sound, admitting he enjoyed the conversation before taking his leave. Alicia curtsies, feeling a surge of triumph as she realizes she has sown the seeds of discord that will one day grow to fruition, keeping her firmly on track to becoming the greatest villainess of all time. As the king departs, the heavy door closes with a definitive click, and Alicia finally allows herself a moment to breathe, clutching her chest as the adrenaline begins to fade. A young man, Prince Duke, leans in close to her, his clear eyes filled with concern as he asks if she was nervous. Alicia quickly denies it, though she can't help but notice the striking resemblance he bears to his father, the king. He encourages her to eat her fill of the sweets provided, noting that she must be tired after such intense chit-chat. Alicia happily partakes in the cookies and cakes, her childish side momentarily surfacing as she discovers all of her favorite treats are present. Later, as she prepares to leave, Duke approaches her once more near her carriage, asking for a moment of her time. He presents her with a small, wrapped gift, explaining that it is a slightly late birthday present. Alicia is genuinely surprised that a member of royalty went out of his way for her, and she asks for permission to open it. Inside the box lies a simple but exquisite necklace featuring a brilliant gemstone. Alicia gasps as she realizes the stone is a diamond, a gem far more expensive in this world than in her previous one. Seeing her dazed expression, Duke asks if she dislikes it, but Alicia quickly reassures him that she will treasure it. As she boards the carriage, her brother calls for her to hurry, and Duke bids her farewell with a satisfied smile. Inside the moving carriage, Alicia gazes at the necklace, noting that its beauty reminds her of Duke's eyes. However, her villainous resolve quickly hardens. She decides that if he eventually falls for the heroine as dictated by the game's logic, she will refuse to return the gift, relishing the thought of him hating her for her defiance. Back at her estate, Alicia retreats to the library to study a map, her mind fixated on the village of Lorana she mentioned to the king. She realizes the village is actually quite close, requiring only a traverse through the forest behind her family's land. Everything she told the king was merely theoretical knowledge gained from books, but she believes a good villainess must have practical experience. Knowing her father would never give her permission to visit such a dangerous place, she resolves to sneak out on her own under the cover of night. Clad in a dark hooded cloak and carrying a lantern, Alicia slips into the pitch-black forest. Every rustle and shadow causes her to jolt with fear, but she repeatedly reminds herself that she is a villainess and cannot be frightened by a simple woods. As she pushes deeper into the overgrowth, she encounters a magical barrier that crackles with energy, protecting the village's perimeter. Relying on her own latent magic, she manages to pass through the shimmering wall and emerges from the trees, only to be hit by an awful, oppressive smell. The sight before her is harrowing. People lie collapsed and homeless on the ground in the middle of the village. Alicia is momentarily loomed over by the sheer scale of the suffering, fearing she might be killed if she is outed as a noble. Suddenly, a hand pats her shoulder, and she jolts as a man with tired eyes and stubble looks down at her. He gently tells the little lady that she isn't from around there and should hurry home, but Alicia stands her ground. She explains that she came to see the truth of this place with her own eyes. Despite his ragged appearance, she feels an unexpected warmth from him. The man leads her into a simple, dimly lit building, apologizing that he has nothing to serve her to drink. He sits across from her at a wooden table and asks what she would like to know, beginning Alicia's first true descent into the grim reality of the world she intends to rule. Will, a blind man living in the secluded village of Lorana, sits across from a young girl, sensing her presence through sharpened senses that transcend sight. He identifies her as a noble lady not by her appearance, but by the subtle clues of her breathing, the specific cadence of her footsteps, the rustle of high-quality fabric, and a scent entirely foreign to the rough village surroundings. Alicia, startled by his accuracy, offers a small apology for her disbelief, which Will dismisses with a calm, nostalgic air. He reveals a past tied to the royal palace, where he once served until a dispute with a high-ranking noble led to his downfall. As retribution for his defiance, his eyes were taken from him, and he was banished to this remote settlement. Alicia recoils at the cruelty of his story, yet Will remains composed, reflecting on how long-standing traditions often fail to meet the moral standards of modern times. He learns the young girl's name is Alicia and finds it fitting as he shares his philosophy on history. To Will, the study of the past serves a singular purpose: to gather knowledge from books and apply it to making the present better than the day before. As their conversation deepens, Alicia finds herself shedding her usual inhibitions and confessing her secret ambition to become a villainess. Will listens without judgment, nodding along as if he had long expected a member of high society to eventually seek out the truth behind his exile. Though Alicia recognizes his wisdom and finds it difficult to believe such a man was discarded by the crown, Will admits to harboring a lingering resentment toward the nobility while still acknowledging the inevitability of his fate. He attempts to warn her away from the dangers of the village, but seeing her resolve, he extracts a promise that she only visit during the night for her own safety. 2 years pass in this manner, with Alicia diligently balancing her noble studies and swordsmanship training with secret nighttime excursions to Lorana to learn from the old man. The passage of time brings Alicia to her 10th year, and the atmosphere at the Rekishi estate remains lively. Her brothers, Albert and Alan, prepare for their own milestones as 15-year-olds entering the Magic Academy, the very setting of the Otome game Alicia knows so well. While her brothers squabble over who will accompany her into town, Alicia's mind fixates on the impending arrival of the game's heroine at the academy. She anticipates the sparks of love that will soon fly between the heroine and the prince, signaling that the time for her to fulfill her role as a villainess is drawing near. When the brothers suggest a carriage ride into town, Alicia shocks them by demanding to ride on horseback instead. She views this as a necessary skill for a true villainess, dismissing their concerns about her gender or safety with an arrogant, practiced laugh. Upon arriving in the bustling town, Alicia gravitates toward a botanical shop owned by a man named Paul. Paul, a lower noble who hails from a family of greenery magic users, recognizes Alicia as the sister of his acquaintances Henry and Eric. Alicia marvels at the collection of rare medicinal herbs and valuable plants she had previously only seen in her textbooks. Paul explains that he opened the shop to put his extensive knowledge to practical use, helping those in need by providing cures for ailments of the body and heart. This echoes the lessons Alicia learned from Will about the importance of applying knowledge toward a better future. When Paul praises her for her impressive understanding of plant life, Alicia catches herself nearly acting with humility. She quickly pivots back into her villainous persona, claiming her knowledge is merely the bare minimum expected of someone of her stature, much to the amusement of those around her. Despite her attempts at arrogance, Paul and her companions are more charmed than offended by her behavior, which Alicia views as a temporary failure in her villainous training. Returning home, she is greeted by Prince Duke, whose presence adds a layer of tension to the afternoon. When the prince asks about her day and offers to take her on a future outing, Alicia's focus remains elsewhere. She abruptly announces her desire to take the formal swordsmanship test to measure the results of her 2 years of training. This request is met with immediate and harsh resistance from her family. Her brother shouts for her to give up the idea, citing her age and gender as barriers. Alicia stands her ground, pointing out that the rules of the test contain no such stipulations and demanding sound reasoning for their refusal. The argument ends with Alicia storming out, though she secretly prides herself on how villainous her outburst felt. Later, Alicia overhears her father and brother discussing the true reason they are keeping her from the test. They admit that her prowess with the sword has already far surpassed what any child should be capable of achieving. They fear that if she takes the official test, she will garner far too much attention, and they desperately wish for her to live out a normal, quiet youth instead. Alicia confronts them, refusing to be treated like a child and demanding the truth. Her father strikes a deal. He will tell her everything once she turns 15 and enters the Magic Academy. Frustrated by the delay, Alicia retreats to her room, pouting but eventually resolving to use her time more effectively. She decides to break her promise to Will and travel to Lorana during the day, hoping he can help her navigate her conflicting feelings. The daytime trek through the forest reveals a much darker and more oppressive atmosphere than Alicia expected. Upon reaching the village, she is met with the sight of a violent brawl and a town teeming with rough characters. She witnesses a group of men brutally kicking a small, 6-year-old child named Gilles, who lies bleeding and coughing in the dirt. Alicia freezes in terror, her legs barely moving as she realizes the child will die if the assault continues. Before she can act, Will suddenly appears and grabs her, shielding her from the scene and dragging her away. He berates her for ignoring his warnings, emphasizing that she has no idea what she is getting herself into by coming there during the day. Alicia returns to the estate in a daze, her clothes stained with blood and dirt, much to the horror of her maid, Rosetta. That night, Alicia sneaks back to Will's home and finds Gilles resting there, though he is suffering from a severe fever caused by his wounds. Will explains that the village lacks medicine and that the child's body may not hold out. He reveals that Gilles is an orphan whose parents were killed, and in a village built by exiled criminals, children are branded as criminals from birth. Will laments that Gilles is exceptionally wise and could have become an excellent man if given a proper education, but such a future is impossible in Lorana. Alicia stares at the dying boy, struck by the profound unfairness of their disparate lives. She, born into comfort and affection, and he, born into a cycle of violence and neglect. She feels a crushing sense of powerlessness, realizing that for all her privileges, she was too scared to even move when the child was being beaten. In her room later that night, Alicia's guilt transforms into a new, fiercer determination. She believes that the heroine of the game would have been able to save the boy, and as the heroine's rival, she refuses to let anyone say she is too young or powerless to do the same. She rejects the idea of being a normal girl who needs rescuing and decides that if the heroine is capable of such strength, then she must be strong enough to surpass her. Alicia resolves to shed her ordinary life and fully embrace her path. She will not be just any ordinary villainess. She will exert such an influence and gain such power that her name will be etched into history forever. Alicia rushes through the morning, having just secured a precious dose of antipyretic medicine from a local shopkeeper named Paul. Paul, sensing the urgency in the young girl's eyes, insists that the medicine is on the house, asking only that she become a regular patron of his store in exchange. He reminds her to dissolve the medicine in water before administration, urging her to hurry to whoever needs it so desperately. Alicia beams with gratitude, thanking the kind man before sprinting away, noting to herself that such a botanical shop owner might have been a wonderful career path if she weren't destined to be a villainess. Alicia arrives at a secluded room where a young boy named Gilles lies in bed, his fever finally breaking as he drifts into a peaceful sleep. An older man named Will sits by the bedside, his face lined with relief as he thanks Alicia for her intervention, noting that while the boy's wounds have not yet healed, he is no longer at death's door. Alicia stands near the stairs, shrouded in her cloak, feeling a wave of inadequacy wash over her. She dismisses the idea that she saved the boy, attributing the success solely to her privileged position as a noble rather than her own strength. This moment of reflection ignites a fierce fire within the young girl, as she vows to stop making excuses for her age. She realizes that her previous intentions to become the greatest villainess were mere cockiness, as she lacked the actual power to act when push came to shove. Standing with a determined glare and clenched fists, she resolves to put everything she has into her training, aiming to become the greatest villainess the world has ever seen. Alicia understands that a master villainess must first be a master of magic. She spends the next 3 years scouring the Williams estate library, perusing countless volumes in search of magical knowledge. Despite her extensive reading, she finds not a single book regarding magic, concluding that such sensitive materials must be kept on personal bookshelves elsewhere in the mansion. Just as she prepares to turn the entire house inside out to find them, a strange sensation draws her attention to a section of the library she has never noticed before. A shelf seems to manifest out of nowhere, holding exactly what she sought. She reaches out and pulls a heavy tome titled Practical Black Magic, Volume 25, from the shelf. Her eyes widen in shock and delight as she realizes the entire section is packed with magical texts. She scolds herself for overlooking such an obvious treasure trove, which includes titles like Magic for Beginners and the Book of Basics. Clutching a stack of books, she declares her intent to hit the ground running on the road of villainy. Seated at a library table, Alicia dives into the theory of her new craft, learning that anyone with magic power can cast level 1 spells. The texts reveal a hierarchy where magic beyond level 50 requires the immense power of the great noble families, and the scale peaks at level 100. Alicia, a daughter of one of the 5 great families, feels she is more than capable of reaching these heights. She notes an episode from the game of her previous life where the heroine and Prince Duke surpassed even level 100, and she decides there is no reason she cannot go even further. Eager to move from theory to practice, Alicia begins with Level 1, Magic to Float Objects. The instructions are abstract, requiring no specific incantation but rather a focus on gathering magic into the fingertips and snapping. She concentrates, feeling the magic within her body, and commands a book to float. The book wobbles unsteadily in the air before suddenly plummeting onto her head with a loud wham. Rubbing her stinging head, she acknowledges that even with her power, constant practice is necessary to master the art. Several days of grueling training pass. Alicia masters Level 5 Magic, which allows her to move multiple heavy objects simultaneously with ease. During a short break, she flips through her books, noting that while some spells like nail trimming or teeth whitening seem useless, others will surely be handy. However, the physical toll is mounting. A persistent headache throbs behind her eyes, and her body feels heavy from cutting down on sleep to maximize her practice time. She considers increasing her muscle training to build stamina, but for now, she allows herself only a 5-minute rest before pushing on to the next level. A maid interrupts her study, calling her to meet her father, the master of the house. Alicia finds her father, Arnold, in a state of visible agitation, informing her that His Majesty the King has arrived at the mansion specifically to speak with her. Arnold paces nervously, pleading with Alicia to conduct herself with the utmost politeness so as not to offend the monarch. Alicia offers a serene smile, reassuring her father that there is no need to fret, though she privately observes that he is clearly the more nervous of the two. Inside the grand reception hall, the king sits upon an ornate gold chair, flanked by the heads of the other great families: John of the Evans family, Neville of the Smith family, and Derek of the Hardson family. Alicia greets the king with a graceful bow, noting it has been 2 years since her last Villainess trial. The king mentions he has heard much about her from the prince before posing a pointed question: does she love her country? Alicia finds it difficult to discern his reasoning but wonders if he is testing her patriotism. When the king asks how she feels about how the country is run, Alicia delivers a shocking response. She despises the preferential treatment of the nobility. Her father recoils in horror, and the other family heads demand to know if she is mocking them. The king, however, signals for them to leave her be and allows her to continue. Alicia argues that the only requirement for nobility is possessing magic power, which has no correlation to being an effective politician. She laments the nonsensical class system that wastes the skills of talented commoners simply because they lack magic. As Alicia speaks, her headache intensifies, making the floor look hazy. The king probes further, asking if she would care if she were stripped of her family name and privileges. Alicia answers without hesitation that she would not, as she finds it repulsive to remain in her position while brilliant people are crushed under her feet. The king, intrigued, calls her a strange child and dismisses her. Alicia takes her leave, her vision swimming as she wonders if she answered like a proper villainess. As she enters the hallway, her strength finally fails, and she sways before collapsing. A young man named Albert catches her, shouting her name in alarm as he realizes she is burning up with a fever. He carries her toward her bedroom while others call for a doctor, noting she had looked unwell for some time. Alicia awakens in her bed, her brain feeling fuzzy and her body unable to move a muscle. To her surprise, Prince Duke is in her room, asking if she is awake. He gently helps her sit up, urging her to take the medicine he has brought for her. Alicia stares at him in a daze, the warmth and coziness of the moment clashing with her internal exhaustion. Alicia awakens with a vibrant surge of energy, her fever vanished and her health restored thanks to the medicinal treatment she received. As she stretches her arms wide in her bedroom, a sense of relief washes over her, yet she quickly finds herself flushing with deep embarrassment as the memories of her previous self-consciousness resurface. She desperately resolves to banish those awkward thoughts from her mind as soon as possible. Her thoughts drift to the prince, acknowledging that from his perspective, she likely occupies the role of a little sister at best. She notes that when she finally woke, he was no longer by her side, a fact she considers a life-saving mercy given her current state of mortification. Moments later, she finds herself surrounded by her concerned family members, including her father and brothers, who look upon her with visible relief. Alicia offers a sincere apology for causing them such worry, admitting to herself that she overextended her limits until she reached the point of collapse. Her father sternly reminds her that a true villainess must, above all else, be capable of taking care of herself. Setting her sights on the path of villainy once more, Alicia decides that the time has come to gather information, even though the events of the original game have not yet reached the point where the characters are meant to meet. She sets out with a determined stride toward the Academy of Magic, intending to infiltrate the grounds and scout the environment. As she approaches the school, she gazes at the largest building on the horizon, correctly identifying it as her destination. However, upon entering the sprawling walk-through gardens, she quickly realizes she has miscalculated the scale of the grounds. The garden unfolds like a complex maze, and Alicia finds herself hopelessly lost, unable to even find the path leading to the main school building. She hesitates to ask for directions, fearing that as an outsider, she might be exposed or sold out. Furthermore, she realized the original game lacked visuals for the heroine, meaning Alicia might not even recognize her rival upon sight. Just as Alicia begins to feel the weight of her predicament, a young girl with long, flowing hair and a kind expression approaches her, asking if she is lost. The girl introduces herself as Liz Cather, a freshman at the academy. Alicia searches her memory but finds no recognition of the family name Cather. Liz explains with a bright, innocent smile that she is a commoner whose family runs a bakery in the city. The revelation hits Alicia like a thunderbolt. She has inadvertently stumbled upon the heroine of the game. She observes Liz's dark hair, noting that it is surprisingly the same shade as her own. Alicia immediately declares Liz her fateful rival, though she keeps this proclamation internal as Liz reaches out to take her hand. Liz's warmth and purity are palpable, making Alicia feel an instinctive prickle of irritation, yet she acknowledges that Liz is still currently out of her reach in terms of status and training. Liz, acting with the smile of an angel, offers to guide Alicia to the school building. Alicia finds Liz's overwhelming innocence almost uncomfortable to be around, but she allows the heroine to lead the way. While Liz is distracted, Alicia manages to slip away, successfully sneaking into the academy's interior. She navigates the hallways cautiously, noting that she cannot move too quickly for fear of being spotted by the numerous students wandering about during what seems to be a break period. She eventually finds her way to the second library, a grand room filled with extensive research facilities and a significant collection of books, including those on dark magic. Alicia's eyes light up with excitement at the resources available, fueling her desire to grow older so she can officially attend the prestigious institution. While exploring the library, Alicia notices a blackboard where students post weekly assignments and challenges. She sees a prompt discussing ways to bring the country of Lavril under control. Driven by her villainous aspirations, she picks up a piece of chalk and begins writing a strategic response, suggesting the use of surrounding countries to isolate Lavril while pretending to offer help to vulnerable populations to seize their interests. Her intense focus is broken when a sharp, familiar voice calls out her name. She turns to see her brother, Albert, standing with his friend Curtis. Albert looks absolutely incensed at her intrusion, while Curtis gazes at the blackboard in stunned silence, wondering if the complex geopolitical strategy he just read could truly be the work of a 10-year-old girl. Alicia, realizing she is in trouble, quickly drops the chalk and prepares for a lecture. After being scolded and escorted home by her brother, a weary Alicia reflects on the day's events. Despite the trouble, she feels a sense of accomplishment for having finally met the heroine. However, as she moves through her home, she overhears a heated conversation between her father and a man named John. They are discussing Liz Cather, with John warning that Liz's talent is extraordinary but her patriotism is weak, making her a potential danger. Alicia listens intently as they discuss the heretic nature of the heroine's power, noting that in the original game, Liz was indeed considered dangerous for her outstanding abilities. When Alicia is accidentally discovered eavesdropping, her father approaches her with a glowing orb of light, threatening to erase her memory of the conversation. Alicia desperately promises never to speak of what she heard, and her father eventually relents, asking her to pretend the conversation never happened. Alicia quickly dashes away, her mind racing with the realization that Liz has already gained enough power to be deemed a threat, and she resolves that she cannot afford to lose to her rival. A few days later, Alicia visits the young village boy, Gillis, who is still recovering in bed. She reveals that she has finally found a magic book and has been practicing. With a snap of her fingers, she demonstrates a spell that cleans surfaces, leaving a wooden table sparkling. Gillis' adult guardian is shocked, noting that the magic she used is actually level 10, a height she shouldn't have been able to reach so quickly. He sternly warns her that she cannot skip levels and must learn magic in its proper order for her own safety. Alicia, though slightly frustrated that her cleaning magic doesn't work on liquids, preventing her from easily purifying the village's drinking water, promises to follow his guidance. As Alicia turns her attention to Gillis, she is pleased to see him looking better thanks to the expensive medicinal herbs she provided. However, Gillis remains sullen and withdrawn, his mind seemingly closed off after the trauma he has endured. Alicia realizes that while the heroine Liz would likely approach Gillis with kindness and melt his heart, Alicia herself is not interested in such soft methods. When Gillis reacts with hostility, questioning why a noble like her would help him and suggesting she has no idea what he is going through, Alicia doesn't flinch. She coldly informs him that she didn't help him out of the goodness of her heart, but because she believes he can be useful to her. She tells him that since she saved his life, she is now responsible for it. She delivers a chilling ultimatum. If he truly has no desire to live and refuses to make something of himself, she will take responsibility and kill him herself. The sheer intensity in her eyes leaves the young boy speechless as the path of the villainess continues to unfold. Alicia stands before Gillis, observing the miraculous transformation of his blood-stained pillow. Using her level 10 dark magic, she effortlessly purifies the fabric, leaving it spotless and shimmering as if it were brand new. Gillis gazes at the pillow in stunned silence, barely able to process how quickly the grime has vanished. Alicia looks on with a composed expression, explaining that her magic serves as a convenient tool for such menial tasks, much like a magical form of laundry. Despite the display of power, she remains firm in her stance toward his survival. She challenges his resolve, questioning if he ever truly intended to fight for his life. Her words are sharp and demanding, asserting that if he possesses even a shred of a will to live, he must find the strength to struggle. Gillis, still recovering from his wounds with bandages wrapped around his head, listens as Alicia offers him a stern choice. She vows to support him with every resource at her disposal, but only if he demonstrates the willingness to move forward himself. As Gillis sits on the edge of the bed, Alicia towers over him, her silhouette framed by the simple wooden beams of the room. She warns him that choosing to live and aiming for a higher station will only lead to a future fraught with hardship and obstacles. She makes no effort to hide her true intentions, smiling as she admits that she saved him solely so he could become a useful tool for her own ends. Alicia rejects any notion of being a saint or possessing magnanimous mercy. Instead, she leans into her self-proclaimed role as a villainess, taking full responsibility for keeping him alive only because it serves her personal interests. Gillis looks up at her, his eyes wide as he tries to reconcile her harsh words with the fact that she has provided him with medicine and care. The scene shifts as Alicia's eccentric behavior begins to baffle those around her. She strikes a dramatic pose, declaring her ambition to become a villainess who will go down in history. Gillis remains skeptical, muttering about her strange behavior and questioning what she is even talking about. Alicia ignores his confusion, shouting her defiance and insisting that she is not a good person. Meanwhile, an older man stands nearby, whispering that she is simply eccentric but ultimately a good person, a comment that Alicia overheads and immediately shuts down. Gillis begins to realize that Alicia is entirely different from the typical image of a noble, as she lacks any of the expected pretension or soft-heartedness. Despite her abrasive claims, Gillis reaches out and grabs her sleeve as she prepares to leave. He acknowledges his status as an orphan from the village of Larana but insists that he can still be useful in his own way. With a rare, genuine smile, he thanks Alicia for the medicine, a sight that Alicia finds surprisingly charming. Outside the room, Alicia reflects on her actions, noting that if she were a truly kind-hearted person, her words never would have reached someone as guarded as Gillis. She understands that his pride would have made him reject pity, but her terrible and honest approach managed to break through his shell. Alicia eventually transitions from the boys' side back into the social world of the academy, where she encounters her brother Albert and the heroine Liz. Liz greets Alicia with overwhelming enthusiasm, remembering how Albert helped her during the school's entrance ceremony. Alicia finds herself pulled into a meeting of the student council, where the members are brainstorming ideas for the upcoming school festival. Liz is eager to hear Alicia's opinion, despite Alicia's attempts to distance herself and avoid interfering. Alicia views the festival through the lens of a game event, calculating how the villainess should intervene to disrupt the growing bond between the prince and the heroine. In a fit of internal passion, Alicia suggests that Liz should showcase her rare ability to use all magical attributes on a dark stage to maximize the impact. Liz is delighted by the suggestion, interpreting Alicia's strategic interference as a wonderful and supportive idea. Much to Alicia's horror, the student council members agree, and Liz asks Alicia to be her assistant on stage. Alicia recoils in panic, her plan to look like a rival backfiring as everyone praises her for being so thoughtful and diligent. She finds herself trapped in a series of social interactions with Liz, who peppered her with mundane questions about her favorite colors, flowers, and numbers. Alicia's blunt and cold responses, such as her preference for the color black or the number 1, are met with Liz's unfailing optimism, further irritating Alicia. Exhausted by the social effort, Alicia finally reaches her limit and demonstrates a flash of her magic to end the conversation. The atmosphere in the room immediately chills as the student council members witness a 10-year-old girl wielding magic that should be impossible for her age. Her brothers and the other nobles look on in shock, labeling her a heretic for possessing such power before the age of 13. Alicia is abruptly sent to her room, leaving the others to discuss the gravity of her premature magical development. Back at home, she confronts her grandfather, Will, who admits he forgot to mention that the books he gave her were only meant for those over 13. Rather than being discouraged, Alicia is thrilled, seeing this heresy as the perfect trait for a true villainess. However, the chapter ends on an ominous note as her grandfather recalls the last person who obtained great power at a young age. That individual was ruined by a magical overflow and became unable to use magic ever again. Alicia gazes at a flower in her hand, her expression one of quiet contemplation as she reflects on the nature of heresy within her world. Her thoughts drift back to a conversation with a man who warned her that magic typically only manifests at the age of 13, and those rare exceptions who cast it earlier inevitably face a ruined future. The scene shifts to the grandeur of the royal palace of the Kingdom of Dirkies, where the king sits in deep discussion with his advisors. They speak in hushed, worried tones about the unprecedented appearance of 2 children capable of magic at the age of 10, a phenomenon that has never occurred even in the oldest legends. One advisor, Luke, clutches his head as a migraine takes hold, his anxiety peaking as he considers the implications for Alicia's future. He questions whether she might be a saint or something far more dangerous. His companion, Arnold, attempts to offer comfort, suggesting that a father should feel pride in such an accomplished daughter, yet the weight of the situation remains heavy in the room. They acknowledge that while the legendary saint is undoubtedly Liz, Alicia represents a wild card they cannot fully categorize. The advisors compare the 2 young girls, noting that while Liz was born a commoner, she possesses the mana of a high-ranking noble and an unheard-of affinity for all magical attributes. Alicia, despite her highborn status as the daughter of a great aristocrat, currently only demonstrates elementary magic. The king contemplates the instability of magic in those so young, fearing the dangers of a child going berserk. A proposal arises to enroll Alicia in the Magic Academy early so she can be monitored while she trains, but the risk to other students initially seems too high. Ultimately, they decide that she must wait until the standard age of 13 for enrollment, leaving her supervision in the hands of Arnold for the next 3 years. Alicia practices her swordsmanship in a courtyard, her movements sharp and determined. She recalls the stern warning that she must learn her abilities in the correct order to avoid losing her magic or losing control. She speculates that perhaps the man who warned her once cherished someone who went berserk, leading to a life of crushed expectations. In her mind, she reinforces her own identity, believing that a true villainess must be more than just a magic user. She must be capable of tearing through her enemies even without it. Her training is suddenly interrupted by the arrival of Arnold, who appears visibly shaken. He delivers grim news regarding the school festival, explaining that Liz went berserk during a rehearsal for a magical performance. The auditorium was partially destroyed in the outburst, and it took the combined efforts of the Duke and several teachers to suppress her power. Alicia experiences a momentary jolt of guilt, wondering if her own suggestions for the performance triggered the disaster, but Arnold reassures her that she could not have known this would happen. Alicia maintains her persona, claiming that if she were the one to strike, she would do so fair and square rather than through an unstable accident. Later, the king and his officials observe Alicia as she demonstrates her magical progress. She extends her hand, and dark energy crackles through the air, causing books to swish and tap against the table with eerie precision. The observers are stunned by her amazing control, especially considering she is wielding dark magic. The king expresses his surprise and informs her that there has been talk of sending her to the academy before she turns 15. He cautions her to stabilize her power and avoid overdoing it, as those with powerful magic at a young age face a higher chance of losing control. Alicia beams with excitement, declaring her desire to go to the academy immediately, though the king remains inwardly worried about the path ahead. Alicia commits herself to a grueling daily regimen, refusing to slack off in her studies, swordsmanship, or magic. She adapts quickly to her father's constant supervision during her practice sessions, viewing every moment as preparation to become the ultimate villainess. 3 years pass, and Alicia stands before the king as a 13-year-old. Her appearance has matured, and the king remarks on how much she has grown since their last meeting. When he inquires about her magical advancement, she calmly reveals that she has reached level 80, a feat that far exceeds his expectations. The king decides the time is right for her to attend the Magic Academy, but he reveals a hidden motive for her enrollment. He asks Alicia to monitor Catherlis, who is a friend of Alicia's brother. He recounts the legend of the Saint of Salvation, a special girl loved by God who is destined to lead the people, save the world, and join hands with the royal family to bring honor to the country. Alicia recognizes the story from a game she once played, noting that Liz fits the description of the legendary saint perfectly. The king asks for Alicia's honest perspective on Liz. Without hesitation, Alicia describes Liz as a very nice flower garden, implying a personality that is pure and kind but perhaps lacks the realistic judgment needed for leadership. She argues that people cannot live in a country where only flowers bloom, suggesting that Liz's idealism might be a liability. The king is impressed by Alicia's ability to see the essence of things and reveals the true difficulty of the situation at the academy. Liz has become so popular that her followers have reached a point of worship, and currently, no one at the school is willing to disagree with her or view her with rationality. The king admits that he needs someone who can be brutal when necessary, someone qualified to stand against the tide of blind adoration. He formally requests that Alicia use her abilities to help Liz become a full-fledged saint by providing the necessary friction and realistic opposition. Alicia flinches as she realizes that accepting this role, acting as a counterweight to a beloved figure, would essentially make her a villain in the eyes of the public. Her father protests, pleading with the king not to put his daughter in such a difficult position where she will be despised by everyone. However, Alicia's reaction is the opposite of what they expect. She becomes elated, her face lighting up with pure joy. She realizes that the king has essentially appointed her to the very role she has always dreamed of. She enthusiastically accepts the mission, promising to become a villainess whose name will go down in history. Alicia stands with her hands clenched into determined fists as she radiates a joyful energy, declaring her intent to enroll in the Magic Academy. Her announcement met with a heavy, stunned silence from the two men watching her, both of whom seem overwhelmed by the sheer scale of her ambition. Grandpa Will, a man with a weathered face and visible stubble, looks on with a mixture of exhaustion and skepticism, questioning what possible benefit could come from such an endeavor and urging her to consider the consequences with care. Beside him, the young boy Jill reacts with visible shock, his eyes wide as he questions the sanity of the palace adults for forcing the heavy burden of a villainous role onto a mere child. Alicia remains undeterred, meeting their doubt with a playful and confident smile while explaining that she has no intention of accepting such a monumental request without securing something for herself in return. The scene shifts to the grandeur of the royal palace, where Alicia stands before the king in a formal, high-collared gown. She presents her condition with poise, requesting permission to bring Jill, a young boy from the impoverished Roanna village, to the academy as her personal servant. The king, seated upon his throne, leans back with a look of utter bewilderment, asking her to repeat the request as if he cannot believe his ears. While he admits that a noble taking a servant to the academy is standard practice, the mention of Roanna village causes a visible shift in the atmosphere. Alicia's father, standing nearby, recoils in genuine horror, his face pale as he realizes his daughter has been secretly visiting a place that makes him shudder just to hear named. Alicia remains calm under their scrutiny, revealing that she has been visiting the village for years because she desired to see the harsh reality of the world with her own eyes rather than relying on the sanitized knowledge found in books. Alicia's expression hardens with conviction as she advocates for Jill's future, describing him as a brilliant child who has already endured more tragedy than most adults. She recounts how his parents were murdered and how he nearly perished at the hands of thugs when he was only 6 years old. She challenges the unspoken prejudices of the nobility, questioning whether a child deserves a life of misery simply because they were born to a criminal. She argues passionately that with the right guidance and an advanced education, Jill possesses the potential to one day become a pillar of support for the entire country. Back in the village, Alicia presents this life-changing opportunity to Jill, offering him the chance to expand his horizons and leave the squalor behind. Jill hesitates, his brow furrowed as he wonders if he is truly capable of growing on his own while serving a noble. Alicia leans in with a sly, knowing smirk, reminding him that he was handpicked by a villainess. She tells him he must learn to be greedy and seize every opportunity that comes his way, a lesson that finally sparks a fire in the boy's eyes as he firmly declares his desire to go. Jill then turns his gaze to Grandpa Will, his voice small as he asks if the old man can come with them. Grandpa will remain seated, his blind eyes staring vacantly as he reminds them that he is a sinner who has accepted his fate. He recounts the bitter truth of his past, explaining that he was once exiled and robbed of his sight due to the petty spite of a powerful noble. He has long since made peace with the idea that he would never leave the village again. Alicia, however, refuses to let a man of his capability wither away in obscurity. She looks at him with a gaze full of resolve, stating her intention to petition the king himself to reconsider the sentence if the monarch is made aware of the true nature of Will's plight. Though she senses his internal conflict, she leaves him with the request to give her proposal serious thought. As Alicia walks away through the skeletal trees of the village, a sense of unease begins to settle over her. She worries that she may have troubled Will by digging up bitter memories of the palace, but her thoughts are suddenly interrupted by a sharp rustling in the undergrowth. Before she can react, a blood-stained hand lunges from the shadows and grips her arm. She recoils as a foul stench of blood and filth washes over her, realizing she let her guard down in a dangerous place. A battered, wounded figure collapses against her, whispering a desperate plea for salvation. Alicia's eyes widen in horror as she realizes this is no simple scratch. The person's entire body is a map of gruesome injuries. Driven by a sudden surge of adrenaline, Alicia helps the victim toward the village square, shouting for them to hold on as they head for the fountain. Upon reaching the water, she realizes the liquid is too unsanitary for medical treatment, yet there is no time to hesitate. She thrusts her hand forward, and a blinding light erupts from her palm as she casts a purification spell. The water shimmers with magical energy, drawing a crowd of shocked villagers who marvel at the display of power and the girl's expensive clothing. Alicia ignores the whispers, focused entirely on the young woman she is trying to save. As she begins to wash the wounds, she notes the severity of the damage, identifying deep burns and the terrifying onset of necrosis on the woman's lower leg. The local villagers watch with grim resignation, muttering that it is already too late and that the end has come for the poor survivor. They recognize the woman as a victim of a recent arson attack that leveled a nearby home. Alicia feels a cold wave of fear wash over her as she realizes the limits of her own power. Despite being the rival in the world of a game, she is confronted by the brutal reality that in this village, serious injury often means certain death. Grandpa Will approaches, his voice heavy as he observes that even a mere villager understands the woman's fate is sealed. He asks Alicia what her true goal is, questioning if the villainess that will go down in history truly wants a life spent acting as a thoughtful doctor. Alicia gazes at the dying woman, her resolve hardening once more as she defines her own path. She desires to be a villainess defined by fortitude, one who remains rational, hates superficial beauty, and possesses the unwavering determination to protect the weak. Alicia stands frozen for a fleeting moment, her mind racing as she stares at the mangled body of the woman before her. She recognizes that her darkness attribute grants her a natural affinity for healing magic, yet a cold realization settles in. None of the advanced spells she mastered were designed to mend severe burns. She visualizes the various healing arts at her disposal, stitching deep lacerations, setting fractured bones, inducing hemostasis, and dulling agony, but none of them target the raw, charred tissue of the survivor. Despite the impossibility, she grits her teeth, fueled by the internal conviction that a true villainess never surrenders. She focuses her intent, deducing that if low-level magic can suppress the inflammation of acne or smooth rough skin, she simply needs to amplify that same principle to a monumental scale. Alicia ignores the logic of standard medical treatment, declaring that she must succeed or forfeit her title as the world's greatest villainess. She channels an immense, surging torrent of mana into her palms, her eyes wide with the strain of the output. Beside her, Jill watches in awe as the sheer volume of her magical energy illuminates the village square. The blinding light recedes to reveal the woman, now breathing softly and free of the agonizing burns. Alicia exhales, realizing that pouring massive quantities of mana into a basic spell made the impossible possible. However, her expression instantly shifts from relief to grim necessity as she looks at the woman's right leg. The limb remains black and shriveled, the necrosis far beyond the reach of her miraculous healing. Without hesitation, Alicia draws a sharp blade, its steel glinting in the dim light. She commands the woman to hold her breath and orders Jill to pin the victim down while she instructs the woman to bite onto a cloth to muffle her screams. The square erupts with a piercing shriek as Alicia severs the dead limb. Once the deed is done, she immediately casts hemostasis and a pain relief spell, her voice steady despite the carnage. The survivor recoils, weeping and begging for her leg back, but Alicia remains firm, stating that the infection would have claimed her life if she had not intervened. When the woman tries to offer her gratitude, Alicia cuts her off with a sharp, cold look, declaring that she never acts out of goodwill. She leans in close, her eyes narrowing as she explains that the woman must now repay her debt through service. Alicia learns the woman's name is Rebecca. Standing before the gathered crowd, Alicia points toward the survivor and proclaims her the savior of Roanna village. The villagers erupt in whispers, marveling at the miracle of Rebecca rising from the dead. Jill pulls Alicia aside, his voice hushed as he asks why she is attributing her own feat to Rebecca. Alicia smirks, explaining that her reputation as a villainess would be ruined if the world thought she helped people out of the kindness of her heart. She intends for Rebecca to be the public face of change, listening to the residents' opinions and reporting back to Alicia, the covert mastermind working behind the scenes. Alicia then turns to Grandpa Will, apologizing for dredging up his painful history. Will looks toward her with a faint, knowing smile, declining her proposal to return to his old life. He explains that Alicia has built a fire in him, motivating him to stay and witness the evolution of Roanna village firsthand. He promises to watch over Rebecca while entrusting Jill to Alicia's care. As a final gift, he provides a magic potion that temporarily allows them to pass through the village barrier and utilize mana in the outside world. Moments later, Alicia and Jill stand on the grassy hills overlooking the kingdom. Jill stares at the vibrant windmills and the distant, majestic spires of the castle, his eyes misty as he takes in the beauty he was once denied. He wonders aloud if he committed some great sin in a past life to be robbed of such a world for so long. Alicia looks at him, her silhouette framed by the sun, and tells him to be confident in himself. The fabric of the high-end school uniform that marks her transition into the elite magic academy. The weight of her new reality settles over her as she adjusts the sleeves, still processing the disbelief of wearing such exquisite attire. Moments later, Jill enters the room to find Alicia already fully prepared. Jill offers a warm morning greeting, noting with pleasant surprise that the young lady managed to get ready entirely on her own for their first day of school. Alicia maintains a composed exterior, yet internally she anchors herself in the conviction that her journey toward becoming a world-renowned villainess has truly begun. As the morning progresses, Alicia reviews the academic materials provided to her, including a thesis written by the kingdom's saint. She sifts through the pages while reflecting on the rigorous training she endured, which included mastering proper speech and etiquette in a remarkably short time frame. Alicia analyzes the saint's proposal, which suggests dismantling the walls around Roanna village as a solution to poverty. She finds the writing reminiscent of a naive fairy tale, beautiful in its sentiment but utterly devoid of practical solutions for the real world. While others around the saint, including the king and various teachers, praise her as a gifted and noble woman, Alicia identifies a critical lack of political realism in the saint's ideology. She recognizes this gap as the perfect battlefield where the clash between the saint's idealism and the villainess's realism will finally commence. The pair arrives at the Magic Academy, immediately drawing the intense scrutiny of the student body. Whispers ripple through the hallways as students identify Alicia as a member of the prestigious Williams family and a special admission student. They cast suspicious glances at Jill, speculating about his origins as an orphaned commoner and questioning how he secured a position as her attendant. Alicia strides forward with an air of cold indifference, acknowledging that they are receiving far more attention than anticipated. A group of noble girls suddenly intercepts them, swarming Alicia with a barrage of intrusive questions and backhanded compliments. They comment on her appearance, noting that her eyes lack the family's signature purple hue and suggesting she looks more like her brothers Alan and Henry than her sister. The girls boast about their connection to the saint, Liz, and attempt to pressure Alicia into attending their next social gathering to meet their fathers. Alicia finds their transparent attempts at social climbing and their lack of personal boundaries revolting. She bluntly rejects their advances, labeling their behavior unpleasant and refusing to engage in their petty gossip. The confrontation escalates when Liz herself appears, radiating a cheerful aura that immediately draws the noble girls to her side. The girls tearfully accuse Alicia of being cruel and insulting, seeking Liz's protection. Liz, acting as a self-appointed mediator, gently chides Alicia for hurting their feelings and suggests that Alicia should apologize. Liz even offers to hold Alicia's hand to give her the courage to make amends, assuming that Alicia desires to be friends with everyone. Alicia recoils from the gesture, flatly refusing the offer and declaring that she has no interest in playing buddy-buddy with anyone. She excuses herself from the stiff atmosphere, leaving the crowd in a state of shock as rumors of the encounter begin to spread instantly throughout the school. While walking away, Jill expresses his concern, admitting that the thought of the entire school hating her is frightening. Alicia, however, glows with a sense of triumph, viewing the public rejection of the heroine's kindness as the perfect entrance for a villainess. She reassures Jill that she will show him the strongest villainess the world has ever seen. Suddenly, a flash of magic interrupts them, and Alicia finds herself face-to-face with Prince Duke. Before Alicia can react, Duke utilizes teleportation magic to whisk her away to the student council's office. Alicia is momentarily staggered by the sudden transition and the prince's tyrannical use of high-level magic for a mere conversation. Duke looms over her, his gaze intense as he questions why she accepted the king's request to attend the academy despite his own previous offer. Alicia regains her composure and leans into her villainous persona, retorting that she accepted because it allows her to speak to the saint however she pleases. She claims her behavior is fueled by a desire to be cruel and wary, fitting for a villainess who expects the prince to be enamored with the heroine. Duke's response is unexpected. Instead of anger, he draws closer and notices a jewel she is wearing. He teases her, asking if she wore it specifically for him, and praises her as so cute, while she blushes furiously. Alicia, completely flustered and feeling teased, pushes him away and labels his behavior impudent. She makes a hasty retreat, frustrated that a villainess should never have made such a blunder by losing her cool. She reunites with a worried Jill, insisting she is fine despite her visible agitation. After school, the narrative shifts to the Magic Academy's Rose Garden, where a large tea party is in full swing. Liz welcomes Alicia warmly, surrounded by her good friends and supporters. Alicia approaches with the intention of engaging in the main event of the day. Liz produces a copy of her thesis and politely asks Alicia for her opinion, hoping they can exchange ideas. The surrounding nobles offer Liz well-deserved praise, calling her paper impressive and egalitarian. Alicia seizes the document and, in a dramatic display of disdain, tosses the pages into the air. She declares that the paper was such a chore to read that she became bored halfway through. She informs a stunned Liz that she could write a paper just as long detailing everything wrong with Liz's idealistic fantasies. While the crowd gasps at her textbook villain move, Alicia clarifies to herself that she is not interested in petty cruelty, but she will not bully the weak, and Liz, as the main character, is anything but weak. Liz, maintaining her composure, asks Alicia to explain why she believes an egalitarian society is unrealistic. Alicia delivers a cold lecture on the nature of reality, stating that as long as humans are separate individuals, an imbalance of power is natural. She argues that the saint's proposal to remove the walls of Roanna village is a beautiful fantasy that would only make things worse without practical countermeasures. Alicia asserts that true change requires a sober understanding of reality and building things up one step at a time, rather than relying on the mutual forgiveness Liz preaches. The noble boys in Liz's circle erupt in anger, accusing Alicia of trying to depict Liz in a bad light and being arrogant. They claim Alicia is mistaken if she thinks her special admission makes her superior. Alicia laughs at their excessive affirmation, calling them dense for failing to see the flaws in Liz's logic. She points out that Liz herself is a product of extraordinary privilege, blessed with magic, a pretty face, and a disposition that everyone is forced to love. Liz, visibly shaken, insists that she has always strived to improve and learn from her mistakes. Alicia counters by defining equality as the recognition that lives hold equal value, but that doesn't mean conditions or outcomes are the same. She warns Liz that the words of a strong and blessed person can be thoughtlessly influential and damaging to those at the bottom. Liz admits she was thoughtless in her writing, feeling the weight of the realization that she could have unintentionally hurt others. As Alicia walks away, she notes that someone who gives in so easily to the perception of evil cannot truly be a heroine. She leaves Liz with a final, chilling piece of advice: experience reality before attempting to restart her thesis. Liz's supporters rush to her side, claiming Alicia was merely jealous, but Liz remains pensive, realizing Alicia might have spoken for her sake. Meanwhile, the noble boys glare at Alicia's retreating figure, declaring her actions toward the pure Liz to be absolutely unforgivable. Rebecca presents her findings in the dim light of a secluded room, confirming that the villagers harbor deep-seated negative emotions toward the outside world. She explains that the residents are a rough people who claim they would mug everyone in sight and go on a rampage if they ever escaped the village. Alicia listens intently as Rebecca urges her to put her safety first, noting that Alicia cannot run away with her current legs. Alicia remains undeterred, clutching her notebook and asserting her well-being while acknowledging that she requested this dangerous help. Despite the grim outlook of a village that has remained unchanged since birth and where everyone has seemingly given up, Alicia detects a flicker of hope deep within the residents. She believes only the residents can truly change their circumstances and resolves to act on that hope. She finds comfort in the fact that the villagers refrain from attacking her because they know Alicia is backing her, even as she muses to herself about her own villainous appearance. The conversation shifts to the outside world as a man listens to the report, acknowledging that while there is growing interest due to Liz's influential opinion, the situation is not yet at a stage for a concrete report. He cautions the two girls not to be impatient, as long-standing issues cannot be changed overnight. Alicia acknowledges the saint's involvement while maintaining her resolve. Later, in a grander setting, a young boy named Jill finds himself cornered by a tall man with a ponytail who has heard rumors of his origin in Roanna village. Jill recoils in shock, wondering if his background has been exposed, while the man towers over him with a smug grin. Henry interrupts the interrogation, demanding that his brother refrain from bothering Jill after arriving so suddenly. The brother apologizes with a dismissive wave, claiming he was merely interested in the boy who didn't seem like a mere commoner. He points out that Alicia and her group seem to hold a strong attachment to Roanna village and reminds them of the conflict with Liz at the Rose Garden party. Jill snaps back at the man, telling him to shut up and stay out of his business, but the man remains unfazed. He observes that Jill's fear of everyone except Alicia is written plainly on his face and teases him for being baited into a reaction. The man suggests that his own bad nature might one day cost Alicia, asking if they truly want someone like him to have his way. Alicia observes the exchange with a hand to her chin, questioning if her brother is searching for her weaknesses. She brings up the incident where he bit Liz's hand, prompting a denial from him as he claims the situation is the opposite of what it appears. He admits to feeling uncomfortable with Liz despite her perfect thesis, noting that Alicia's previous accusations against Liz felt correct to him. He reflects on his relationship with his other half, Alan, noting that despite their different personalities, he usually understands him best. However, he finds it strange how quickly he has come to dislike Liz and decides he no longer wishes to spend time with her. Seeing his stubbornness, he decides not to pry further and informs the group that they are invited to the king's tea party. At King Durkee's castle, the atmosphere is stiff as the guests arrive. Alicia meets with Finn, who greets Liz with a friendly smile while Alicia maintains a cold distance, insisting they are not friends. Finn finds the strange dynamic between Liz and Alicia interesting, unable to tell if they are on good or bad terms. King Durkees enters the room, commanding his guests to drop the formalities for what he calls a simple tea party. He expresses his gratitude to the group as friends of the Duke and invites them to make themselves at home among the lavish spread of cakes and fruits. Alicia notices Liz sitting at a higher seat than the sons of great nobles and wonders if her confident smile is the bravery of a heroine. Alicia recognizes this event from the game she once played, viewing it as a sort of test for the saint to earn points and trigger a true end. She feels like an observer or an inspector, noting that as the villainess, she wasn't even supposed to be present. She recalls having a hard time clearing this part of the game because she couldn't relate to the goody-two-shoes answers required. As she surveys the room, she notes that Gale and Eric clearly dislike her, which aligns with the game's original plot. She finds Henry's friendly but distant actions strange and struggles to read Finn, who acts rationally but hides his true thoughts. Curtis appears cheerful and friendly, but Alicia is most perplexed by Duke, who was cold to her in the game but now acts differently. The king addresses Liz, bringing up her prediction of Duran's economic collapse from 3 years prior. Alicia is startled to realize the king knows what she snuck into the school to write on a blackboard years ago. Liz is surprised by the news of the collapse, having believed her stopgap policies from 4 years ago were successful. The king points out that her failure to follow up on those policies is a weakness, as they reached their limits 3 years ago. Liz immediately suggests forming an alliance to help the failing country, believing it is only right to save those in trouble. Alicia questions if she is being tested as Liz's inspector and pushes back, asking what their own country would gain from helping a failed economy. Alicia proposes a more ruthless solution, making Duran a tributary state since it is currently vulnerable. Liz is horrified, calling the idea conquest, but Alicia argues that doing what is right doesn't solve everything, otherwise Duran's economy wouldn't be in shambles. Alicia shifts the focus to Lavril, a larger and more dangerous country that poses a greater threat to their borders. She dismisses the problem of Duran as insignificant in the long run and argues that their goal should be to protect their own people rather than risking their country for the happiness of neighbors. When Liz asks if there is truly nothing they can do to help the people of Duran, Alicia tells her to use her brain. She points out that Duran specializes in potatoes that have a unique taste but low demand outside the country. Liz realizes they could increase the value of the potatoes to spark an economic recovery, realizing that foreign aid alone is not enough. The king smiles, expressing his pride in having such excellent citizens and acknowledging that while there are no one-shot reversals, there is now a possibility for steady progress. He transitions the conversation to the rare fruits served as sweets, ending the political discussion. As the party concludes, Alicia sighs with relief, eager to go home after the stiff atmosphere. She wanders through a hallway lined with intimidating portraits of royalty, realizing she is lost. She stops before a portrait of the Duke's grandfather and uncle, noting how familiar they look. Duke appears behind her, remarking that he looks like his father and inherited his skin color from his mother. He offers to lead her to the exit, and as they walk, Alicia finds it odd that he is being so kind to her compared to his cold behavior in the game. Duke notices her hesitation and asks if he is walking too fast, offering his hand to her with a smile that Alicia realizes is not a lie. Alicia, a young woman reborn into the world of her favorite Otome game, relishes her role as a villainess. She once adored the venomous antagonist of the game and now strives to surpass the original character's cruelty. Within the halls of the Magic Academy, Alicia actively cultivates her reputation as a rival to the game's heroiness. She meticulously prepares herself to stand against the heroine's formidable capabilities, viewing every interaction as an opportunity to refine her villainous persona. In the quiet study hall, Alicia disrupts the peaceful atmosphere by rejecting Liz's widespread kindness. When Liz offers idealistic sentiments, Alicia metaphorically douses them with cold water, fueling the growing disdain from those around her. She takes immense pride in these moments, viewing the hatred directed toward her as proof of her success as a great villainess. Alicia finds herself isolated in her studies because she can no longer review her lessons in the main building due to the stir she causes. While seeking solitude on campus, Alicia's brother Henry tracks her down. He observes that despite her constant conflicts with Liz, Alicia appears to be enjoying herself immensely. Henry questions her motivations, suggesting that her actions toward the popular and perfect Liz might make her a bad person. Alicia attempts to educate him on her lifelong dream of being a villainess, though she keeps the secret of her supervision to herself. Henry initially struggles to believe that her actions aren't rooted in genuine hatred. Alicia explains that she is training constantly to become a villain capable of bullying the strongest version of Liz, aiming for the pinnacle of ability. Henry finds her reasoning absurd and wonders if she is joking, but Alicia remains dead serious about her goals. He compares her ambition to someone aiming to become a demon king just to stand on equal footing with a hero, noting that in a storybook world, Liz would undoubtedly be the main character while Alicia is the obstacle. Henry confesses his own past feelings for Liz, describing her as special and a source of comfort like cold water to a dry throat. However, he expresses a sense of uncertainty and a feeling of being interchangeable with his peer Alan. Alicia bluntly dismisses his identity crisis, calling him an idiot and insisting that he is simply himself and irreplaceable. Alicia begins to question the nature of Liz's overwhelming popularity and the way people react to her. She notes that Henry and others treat Liz's words as revelations, even when she speaks of obvious things. Alicia wonders if Liz is utilizing magic to manipulate the hearts of those around her, though Henry argues that such permanent mind-altering magic is unrealistic. Alicia contemplates how closely Liz aligns with the in-game heroine, considering that Liz's innocent behavior and natural goodness make her inherently likable. She acknowledges that she herself is the first person to step outside the game's original plot. The conversation is violently interrupted when a group of men suddenly attacks. A large man strikes from behind, causing a loud thud as Alicia is incapacitated. She awakens inside a dark storage shed, her body covered in cuts and bruises and a dull pain throbbing in the back of her head. Realizing she has been kidnapped, she notes with surprise that this event never occurred to the villainess in the original game. Her young companion Jill is also present and under threat. Alicia discovers a collar around her neck that acts as a magic suppressor, rendering her unable to use her abilities. The kidnappers mock her, with one man commenting on her appearance and another threatening her when she defies them. They mention they were ordered to torment her and decide to kill the boy, Jill, because he is in the way. Jill, though injured and bleeding, pleads for Alicia to run away and save herself. Alicia refuses to abandon Jill, her eyes narrowing with a lethal intensity as she demands to know who they think they are killing. Despite her sealed magic and the rope binding her, Alicia's aura terrifies the men. She manages to free herself and retrieves a sword, moving with a speed and precision that shocks her captors. She internalizes that regardless of whether this is a game setting or an event, the current situation is reality. Alicia engages the men in combat, her mind calm and determined as she maintains her reason even in a life-or-death struggle. She overpowers one man, though she chooses not to kill him, which leaves the other kidnappers bewildered that a young girl could be so dominant without magic. One kidnapper, calling his comrades cowards, attempts to take care of her himself. Alicia's power is so overwhelming that the man realizes he is at a disadvantage and tries to find a more open space or a different weapon. As Alicia pursues him, she is suddenly restrained by a surge of magic. Liz appears on the scene, casting a spell while crying out Alicia's name. Liz, misinterpreting the situation, believes she is stopping Alicia from doing something horrible as she saw Alicia attacking the man. Jill screams at Liz that the man is the enemy, but the distraction allows the kidnapper to recover. The man lunges forward with a blade, intent on killing Alicia while she is magically held in place. Jill frantically screams for the violence to stop as a blade pierces through the air. Prince Duke suddenly intercedes, taking the blow intended for Alicia. In a shimmering burst of teleportation magic, the Duke materializes on the battlefield just as the chaos of the kidnapping reaches its peak, his sudden appearance catching the captors off guard while he immediately assesses the state of his allies. Alicia cries out in relief at the sight of him, though the surrounding scene remains grim as security guards finally swarm the area to subdue the remaining thugs. While the guards wrestle the criminals to the ground, the Duke apologizes for his late arrival, his eyes scanning the wounded even as he issues a stern command to ensure no other accomplices escape the perimeter. Jill remains huddled on the ground, battered and visibly shaken by the ordeal, while the Duke reassures the group that he is unharmed despite the intensity of his magical transport. Moments later, the focus shifts to the immediate aftermath of the skirmish as the Duke moves toward Jill to offer comfort and the promise of medical attention. Alicia watches them with a heavy heart, her face smeared with dirt and blood, while Henry remains close by to provide support to the exhausted boy. The Duke's expression hardens as he notices the injuries Alicia sustained, but she quickly dismisses his concern, insisting she is fine even as the weight of the near-death experience settles over her. Nearby, Liz and her companions rush onto the scene, their frantic calls for Alicia echoing through the trees as they arrive to find the situation barely contained. The air remains thick with tension as the Duke pulls Alicia into a protective embrace, his silent gaze conveying a mixture of relief and simmering fury at those who dared to harm her. As more of their peers gather, Albert approaches with a look of pure shock and horror, his eyes darting between his sister's bruised form and the Duke who stands guard over her. He expresses his disbelief at the violence that occurred, his voice trembling with a mix of fear for his sister and indignation toward the thugs who were hauled away by the guards. The Duke remains stoic, mentioning that dark magic specializes in healing, preparing to mend the visible damage inflicted during the struggle. Albert recoils slightly at the mention of such magic, his own sense of justice and knightly pride clashing with the brutal reality of the rescue. The conversation takes a sharp turn toward the nature of the conflict, as Albert questions the necessity of the violence Alicia displayed during the kidnapping. He recounts seeing her attempt to strike down an unarmed man with an axe, his voice filled with a judgmental tone that suggests she went too far. Alicia's supporters immediately jump to her defense, pointing out that the kidnapper struck first and that her actions were purely in the interest of survival and protection. Albert remains unconvinced, arguing that she could have avoided such brutality by talking through the situation, a sentiment that the narrator notes seems entirely detached from the life-or-death stakes she faced. Alicia stares at her brother, her eyes flashing with a cold realization as she challenges his idealistic views by asking if he would truly refrain from drawing his sword if his own family were being murdered. She dismisses his claims that violence only breeds hatred as mere wishful thinking, reminding him that she was facing certain death while he remained safe elsewhere. Albert continues to preach about knightly pride and the loss of one's way, seemingly unable to grasp the primal necessity of the struggle she just endured. Alicia watches him with a growing sense of detachment, noting that his words are the product of hindsight rather than the reality of the moment. Liz attempts to intervene with a performative display of sympathy, apologizing for causing anxiety and claiming she would have come to the rescue if only Alicia had trusted and waited. Alicia cuts through the heroine's flowery speech with a blunt statement, declaring that it was the Duke who actually saved her, not Liz. She expresses her firm belief that the Duke will always live up to her trust, contrasting his decisive action with Liz's empty promises of a rescue that never came. The tension peaks as the Duke's magic begins to react to the emotional turbulence, ice crystals manifesting in the air as his temper threatens to flare. The Duke's magic swirls in disarray as he demands that Liz and her group stop their condescending talk, his voice cold as the ice he creates. He points out the absurdity of expecting Alicia to wait for a rescue she didn't know was coming while a child's life was on the line. He openly questions the morality of Liz's stance, asking if she truly believes it was wrong for Alicia to protect Jill. Liz recoils, her saintly persona crumbling under the weight of the Duke's interrogation, while her followers try to de-escalate the situation. The Duke's anger boils over as he scathingly asks how someone like her can dare to call herself a saint when she lacks the empathy to understand the victims standing right in front of her. Others move in to break up the confrontation, suggesting that the priority should be treating Alicia's injuries rather than arguing over philosophy. One of the boys notices blood near Alicia's mouth and comments on how painful it looks, while she suddenly remembers that a tooth fell out when she was struck. She produces the small, bloodied tooth, noting with a strange calm that it explains why she found it difficult to speak clearly. The group is stunned by her casual acknowledgement of the injury, and the Duke immediately begins making arrangements for her formal treatment at the royal palace. Liz tries one last time to regain her footing, insisting she only wanted a peaceful resolution and claiming she doesn't believe anyone wanted the kidnappers to die. Alicia looks her in the eye and tells her that while she doesn't doubt Liz's sincerity, her words are empty because she cannot see the battered, real person standing before her. Alicia declares that she will not hesitate to draw her sword again if faced with the same choice, prioritizing the reality of self-defense over the abstract ideals of nonviolence. Liz's supporters eventually lead her away, realizing there is no point in continuing the debate while Alicia is clearly focused on her own path. Later, as the Duke carries Alicia toward a waiting carriage, she protests being treated like a child, though her body is clearly exhausted. The onlookers comment on the Duke's surprisingly gentle side, noting that he has known Alicia since they were children and treats her with a sibling-like care that masks a deeper intensity. Alicia eventually drifts into a deep sleep, and when she finally wakes, she finds herself in an unfamiliar, lavish bedroom within the royal palace. She is startled to find the Duke in the room with her, half-dressed and holding the necklace that had been stolen by her kidnappers. He explains that he recovered the necklace from the kidnapper's pocket and offers to put it back on her, a gesture that Alicia finds incredibly awkward and intimate. She wonders if he will scold her for losing it, but his demeanor remains calm as he focuses on the task. The moment is interrupted when Jill bursts into the room, relieved to see her awake and explaining that she had been sleeping for a long time while her wounds healed. Jill confesses his frustration at being unable to help her during the kidnapping, promising to become a fine man who can protect her in the future. As Alicia fully regains her bearings, the conversation shifts to the identity of the mastermind behind the attack, Neil of the Johnson family. It is revealed that Neil, an avid follower of Liz, orchestrated the kidnapping because he felt Liz had been wronged. The Duke informs Alicia that the Johnson family has already received formal action from the royal family and that Neil has been charged with a felony for endangering a student's life and smuggling outsiders into the academy. Alicia is frustrated to realize that the king may have even used the incident as a suitable trial to facilitate the growth of Liz as a saint, essentially using Alicia as bait. The Duke expresses his own disdain for the way the king and others prioritize the legendary saint over individual lives. He tells Alicia that there is no such thing as a preordained happy ending and that people must make their own destiny. He thanks Jill for coming to Alicia's aid, acknowledging the boy's status doesn't matter compared to his desire to protect her. Despite the Duke's obvious care and the high-stakes situation they just survived, Alicia remains somewhat dense regarding the romantic implications, viewing her relationship with the Duke through a more pragmatic lens focused on her goal of becoming a villainess. Finally, Alicia has a confrontation with her father, who is furious that her life was put in danger. He attempts to revoke his permission for her special enrollment and supervision of Liz, insisting that she is still just a 13-year-old girl who shouldn't be pushing herself so hard. Alicia refuses to back down, admitting she let her guard down but insisting that her magic is among the best on campus. She begs for one more chance, promising to train even harder to compete with Liz's monstrous magical attributes. Her father eventually relents but sets a nearly impossible condition. She must reach level 90 in magic to continue. Alicia accepts the challenge with a determined smile, knowing that while level 90 is unrealistic for her current age, she must achieve it to stand as a true rival to the heroine. Alicia withdraws from the world to hone her magical craft, secluding herself within a solitary hut located on the expansive grounds of her family's mansion. She isolates the structure behind an impenetrable magical barrier, ensuring that no soul can enter or exit as she commits her entire being to her studies. Eschewing all luxury and assistance, she refuses even a single maid to accompany her during this period of intense focus. While she remains hidden from view, her presence is felt through the regular deliveries of essential supplies and a steady stream of books, signaling her total absorption in her magic training. Outside the barrier, life continues for the residents of the mansion. Jill begins his morning with a polite greeting to the staff, standing in the courtyard as servants move about their daily routines. He receives his breakfast from a kind maid who offers him 2 potatoes, questioning if the modest portion will suffice. Jill, mindful of his humble origins, finds the meal quite luxurious. Though the staff reminds him that he is entitled to the same high-quality food served to the young lady of the house, Jill remains focused on his immediate goals. He is determined to utilize the library freely, a privilege granted to him, and aims to consume every scrap of knowledge he can find. Despite his focus, a quiet sense of longing lingers beneath his resolve as he misses Alicia's presence, yet he forces himself to push through the loneliness to meet her expectations. In the Williams family library, the Duke enters and interrupts Jill's studies to offer a rare gift. He presents a potion designed to grant passage through the barrier Alicia has erected. The Duke explains that while he once withheld such means from Alicia, he now finds it necessary to keep some within the house. He corrects Jill's assumption that the potion is meant for Alicia to leave, noting that as a member of the household, she can already pass through the barrier at will. Instead, he gives it to Jill so that the boy can return to the village when needed. Jill is momentarily stunned, having expected the Duke to eventually expel him from the mansion, but instead he finds himself on the receiving end of a noble's genuine kindness for the first time. As Jill processes this gesture, the Duke reflects on his daughter's nature, acknowledging that Alicia has never been a conventional child. He recalls how she devoted herself to her studies with a fervor that bordered on the insatiable, leading many to view her as a vital asset to the nation at an incredibly young age. While other children spent their time playing, Alicia remained apart, never forming a single friendship until she met Jill. The Duke admits to his own failings as a parent, feeling like a terrible person for allowing his daughter to lock herself away in what her mother, Layla, once described as a form of torture. He remembers his wife's biting disappointment and her stinging question of whether he could truly call himself a father after allowing Alicia to reach level 90 before ending her isolation. The Duke admits that he never intended for things to escalate to this point. He had merely hoped that his supervising would encourage her to give up her more radical ideas. Instead, his pressure backfired, only serving to make Alicia more motivated than ever to achieve her goals. He expresses a deep-seated fear regarding the involvement of Liz Cather, the Saintess. Though His Majesty apologized for a past incident and agreed to remove Alicia from her monitoring role, the king secretly wished for her to continue, recognizing the incredible value she holds for the country. The Duke views both Alicia and Liz as exceptional individuals whose abilities the nation seeks to utilize, but he laments that he cannot guarantee protection for either Jill or Alicia in the face of such high-stakes political maneuvering. Jill listens to the Duke's confessions without judgment, flatly stating that he does not despise the man. He asserts that Alicia is not a mere tool to be used and that she actually views the Duke's approach as somewhat lukewarm. Jill reaffirms his unwavering loyalty to Alicia, promising to stand by her side regardless of what the future holds. He recognizes that Alicia is teaching him how to be a useful commoner, a role that bridges the gap between the magical elite and the ordinary people. The Duke realizes that it is this very quality, Jill's steadfast nature, that has earned him Alicia's rare trust. Far from the mansion, in Roanna village, the fruits of Alicia's teachings are beginning to manifest. The villagers gather to celebrate a successful harvest, marveling at the size and quantity of the potatoes they have managed to grow. A young girl cheers at the prospect of finally having a full stomach every day, though an older villager gently reminds her that they aren't quite there yet. They credit their success to the knowledge Alicia provided, noting that the harvest continues to increase because they followed her instructions exactly. One man expresses surprise that a noble's daughter would even bother to learn how to tend a field, concluding that she must have researched the techniques herself specifically to help them. However, the village's newfound prosperity brings new dangers. A group of thieves attempts to steal the food, leading to a violent confrontation. A man named Nate intervenes, using his strength to defend the villagers and recover the stolen supplies. Despite his help, Nate remains skeptical of the village's progress. He warns that farming such a large field will only make them a bigger target for those who resent their success. He dismisses Alicia as just another noble acting on a whim, performing charity work simply to feel good about herself. He points out that she stopped showing her face a long time ago and questions if anyone truly believes she will liberate the village. A villager named Rebecca counters Nate's cynicism, insisting that Alicia is different. She argues that if Alicia only wanted to perform charity, it would have been much easier to simply buy and give away food. Instead, Alicia prepared them for long-term survival by providing potato seeds, farming tools, and a detailed notebook on how to increase crop yields in their perpetually cloudy environment. Rebecca believes that even if Alicia never visits the village again, the knowledge she shared has given them the ability to build a better life with their own hands, which makes her presence incredibly valuable. Back at the palace, in the king's office, the political ramifications of Alicia's and Liz's actions are being debated. The king reviews Alicia's suggestions, which she wrote to accompany a paper by Liz. He notes that because of Liz's emotional appeal, public sympathy for Roanna Village is at an all-time high. Alicia's paper, however, provides the practical framework for reform, outlining different concerns and possible responses. The king admits that Roanna Village has been a humanitarian issue for a long time, one that many previous kings chose to ignore because it wasn't considered a pressing matter of state. He acknowledges that the village is a waste of magical resources and land, but he feels overwhelmed by the mountain of other state matters requiring his attention. The king's son, the prince, suggests that perhaps the administrative structure of the country itself is the problem. He points out that even trivial local administration requires instruction from the top because the national direction is too broad, which slows down the country's overall development. He asks if the king would be willing to allow more discretion in the field. Recognizing his father's exhaustion, the prince offers to take over the reform of Roanna Village himself. The king, struck by his son's competence, agrees to leave the matter in his hands, reflecting that just a few years ago, no one would have believed that his generation would be the one to lead these reforms. 2 years have passed since Alicia first entered her isolation. Jill continues his studies in the library, noting that there is only 1 more year left until Liz Cather graduates from the academy. Alicia, meanwhile, has continued to advance at a superhuman speed. When she turned 15, she was given the opportunity to return to the academy, but she refused, stating that she was fine where she was. Jill continues to push himself, wanting to show her how much he has grown the next time they meet. The wait finally ends when a maid rushes into the room to inform Henry and Jill that Lady Alicia has finished her training. The magical barrier that had surrounded the hut for years has finally vanished. Jill sprints toward the building and flings open the door, calling out her name. He finds Alicia sitting calmly at a table, looking more mature than when she first entered her seclusion. She looks up at him with a knowing smile, her first words acknowledging the time that has passed by, noting that he has grown taller since they last stood face to face. Alicia stands before Jill after a 2-year absence, her appearance so transformed and mature that Jill finds himself momentarily intimidated by her beauty. The young boy blushes as Alicia leans in close, her hand resting near his neck while he struggles to find the words to express everything that has happened during their time apart. Alicia interrupts the sentimental moment with a burst of energy, raising a fist and declaring their immediate departure for Roanna Village. Jill recoils in shock, questioning why they aren't returning to the main house first where Rosetta and the Duke are waiting. Alicia ignores his concerns, her eyes flashing with determination as she explains that she has finally achieved her goal and must reach the village as soon as possible. Clad in a travel cloak, Alicia treks through the woods toward the village, her mind set on the monitoring role she has secured. Upon arrival, she gazes at the settlement, noting how much brighter and more vibrant it appears compared to her previous visit. The villagers immediately recognize her, calling out her name in surprise. A young woman named Rebecca rushes toward her, her face lighting up with joy as she exclaims that Alicia's return feels like a dream. Nearby, a stern-faced man named Nate watches the reunion with a guarded, silent expression. Rebecca informs Alicia that Roanna Village has undergone significant changes over the last 2 years and offers to call for Uncle Will, who is currently working in the fields. Nate steps forward, his posture rigid as he addresses the noble girl. He serves as a guard for the area and bluntly admits that he does not trust Alicia at all, despite the improvements her presence has brought to the village. He questions her motives, demanding to know what she stands to gain from helping them and warning her against acting on a whim. Alicia meets his gaze with a calm, almost predatory smile. She introduces herself properly and introduces Jill, before challenging Nate's hostility head-on. She mocks his lack of knowledge regarding her character and proposes a duel to settle the matter of her worth. Nate scoffs at the idea of fighting a weak young girl and a noble lady, but Alicia remains undeterred. She turns to a nearby villager and asks to borrow a sword, her confidence radiating from her as she prepares to prove her skill. The duel concludes in a flash, leaving the villagers gasping in disbelief as Nate, the strongest man in the village, lies defeated on the ground. Spectators whisper among themselves, wondering if Alicia used magic to achieve such a swift victory, but others point out that she relied purely on physical prowess. Alicia stands over the fallen guard, explaining that she only wanted to show him who was truly stronger since he refused to trust an outsider. She bluntly critiques his swordsmanship, labeling it poor and overly reliant on brute force. She credits her win to the blessings of her noble upbringing, explaining that her status allowed her to train all day under first-rate instructors without a single worry. She tells Nate that if he had been trained properly, she might not have been his match, but as it stands, his lack of opportunity has left him behind. She encourages him to stop wasting time and use her resources to his advantage, emphasizing that his determination is necessary for the sake of those he cares about, like Rebecca. Alicia then seeks out Uncle Will, who greets her with a warm smile, remarking on how much she has grown. Alicia reveals that she has spent the last 2 years mastering level 91 dark magic, a feat that leaves the old man impressed. She explains that the specific spell she learned is a rare and archaic technique for transplanting body parts. Despite Will's protests, Alicia moves with decisive speed. In a display of dark power, she transplants her own eye into the blind man. As Will regains his sight, he is horrified by the sacrifice she has made. Alicia dismisses his concerns with a sharp tone, telling him she doesn't want a lecture and that she did it because she simply wanted him to be able to see her. Will gazes at her with a mixture of sadness and admiration, remarking that she is truly a villainess. Back at her estate, Alicia dons an eye patch while Rosetta frets over her health. Rosetta is devastated by the loss of Alicia's beautiful eye, but Alicia remains composed, assuring her that the spell worked and that she is fine with having only one eye. She worries briefly that her father might cry, noting his overprotective nature. When the Duke arrives, he is so shocked by her appearance that he collapses, calling for a doctor and demanding to know what happened during her training. Alicia calmly explains that the transplant was her own choice and that she will continue to live her life as she sees fit, even if it is considered unfilial. The Duke, realizing he cannot change her mind, promises to keep his word and allows her to return to the academy to continue monitoring Lizcather. 2 years after her departure, Alicia returns to the Magic Academy, declaring it time for the Villainess revival. She eschews her school uniform for a lavish, dark gown and her signature eye patch, intending to make a dramatic entrance that will stir rumors among the students. As she walks through the grounds with Jill, the students whisper in fear and judgment, labeling her an evil sight. A student named Jane approaches her with hostility, suggesting that Alicia should leave quickly and mocking her flashy attire. Jane praises Lizcather's simplicity and inner beauty, claiming Alicia is no match for her. Alicia gazes at Jane with a piercing look, pointing out the girl's disheveled hair, the sleep crust in her eyes, and her generally unkempt appearance. She accuses Jane of being uncouth and using Liz's philosophy as an excuse to neglect her own hygiene and presentation. Jane reacts with outrage, claiming Liz told her she was beautiful as she is. Lizcather herself then appears, rushing to Jane's side and trying to mediate the conflict. Liz expresses regret over the kidnapping incident from 2 years ago and tries to offer sympathy, but Alicia coldly rejects it, stating she doesn't need pity. As rumors swirl among the onlookers about Alicia being expelled for bad behavior or sneaking into a prince's bed, Alicia stands tall. She observes Liz closely, noting the girl's belief that she is a heroine who would always be saved, a mindset that Alicia finds fundamentally different from her own. Would you like me to analyze the specific types of dark magic Alicia mentioned using for the transplant? Alicia stands before Liz, the world's designated heroine, as the air between them thickens with the weight of unstated truths. Liz claims she intended to save Alicia because she viewed it as an inevitable outcome, yet Alicia remains skeptical, questioning if this girl possesses memories of a past life just as she does. The girl known as the heroine appears entirely unbothered by the fact that Alicia's current actions deviate wildly from the original game script. In the original story, the Villainess never faced kidnapping, yet Liz smiles brightly and dismisses the anomaly by calling herself a lucky girl. Alicia watches her with a keen, clinical eye, noting how Liz describes her mission to make everyone happy and earn Alicia's trust. Liz speaks of a happy ending as though it were a guaranteed law of nature, provided Alicia simply believes in her. Alicia finds this level of opportunism staggering and wonders if Liz even comprehends the arrogance behind her own words. Alicia confronts the gaps in Liz's logic, pointing out that past successes do not guarantee future safety and that Liz's current confidence borders on the delusional. She reminds Liz of an incident 2 years prior involving kidnappers, noting that with Liz's supposed skills, she could have easily stopped both of them. Instead, Liz only stopped Alicia, a choice that Alicia interprets as a subtle, perhaps even unconscious, act of malice. Liz recoils at the accusation, her face flushing as she stammers a denial, insisting that a saintess would never harbor such dark feelings. Alicia presses harder, demanding that if Liz intends to play the role of the good girl, she must commit to it fully rather than just speaking pretty, fluffy words while taking no real action. She mocks the way everything seems to just fall into place for the heroine without any actual planning or effort. Alicia challenges her to test the limits of her abilities and to take control of her life instead of relying on a destiny she does not understand. The confrontation reaches a peak as Alicia flatly rejects the offer of salvation, stating that she has no desire to be saved by the heroine's kindness. She declares that a happy ending blessed by Liz holds no value to her and that she would rather die hated while fulfilling her own ideals. As Alicia turns to leave, the prince, Duke, watches from the distance, confused by the intensity of their exchange. Alicia walks away with a cold finality, leaving Liz standing alone in the wake of such a brutal rejection. Moments later, Alicia encounters her brother Henry, who has arrived to check on her. Henry expresses concern for her reputation at the Magic Academy, explaining that he came to warn her about the rumors circulating there. Alicia smiles, embracing her return to the role of the Villainess. Henry sighs, remarking that Alicia is even more villainous than people imagine. He details the perception at the academy, where Alicia is viewed as a despicable woman who forces her family's power to get between Prince Duke and the commoner Liz. Despite Alicia not having seen her family in 2 years, the gossip mill has painted her as the jealous antagonist trying to force a marriage with the prince. Henry admits he tried to correct these rumors, but his efforts only improved his own reputation while making Alicia look even worse in comparison. The students have concluded that any misfortune Liz suffers is naturally a ploy orchestrated by Alicia. The school environment has grown increasingly toxic, with the student council in a terrible mood because Duke has lost his temper. Students whisper that Liz is finally getting what she deserves, though they fear Duke's current state, describing him as a wounded beast. Some speculate that Liz might be using magic to control people's hearts, as they cannot understand how she gathers so much support otherwise. Alicia muses on the irony of it all, wondering if she is simply hated because she is the Villainess by design. Later, Alicia visits the Magic Academy faculty office to speak with Mr. John. Based on her exceptional results, she has been granted a transfer to the senior year, bypassing the boring first-year classes. Alicia's young servant has also been allowed to take the test and, despite being self-taught, has earned a place alongside her. Mr. John expresses shock that Alicia is only 11 years old and is already entering the highest level of education. He laments that the servant is a commoner and cannot use magic, as he believes the boy would have made a significant mark otherwise. Alicia learns about the systemic bias in higher education and employment, where magic ability is a strict requirement for entry into prestigious institutions. As Alicia exits, Prince Duke suddenly appears and pins her against the wall in a flash of movement. His eyes are filled with a mixture of rage and sorrow as he demands to know what happened to her eye. Alicia, now wearing an eye patch, remains defiant and tells him she gave her eye to someone. Duke is visibly shaken, his voice trembling as he asks if she has any idea how he felt watching over her while she was gone for 2 years. Alicia recoils from his touch, finding his concern bothersome and unnecessary. She tells him not to force his wishes on her and reminds him that she never asked for his protection. After Duke leaves, Alicia reflects on the encounter, feeling a rare sense of regret. She usually prides herself on being articulate, but Duke's intense gaze caused her mind to go blank and her blood to boil. Her servant notes that her behavior wasn't like her usual self. Alicia wonders if her outburst was truly villainous, or if she was just being a terrible person to someone who genuinely cares for her. She realizes that while she can face her doting father or her chastising grandfather with total calm, she struggles to maintain her composure when facing off against Duke. She admits to herself that she simply didn't want him to look at her with such pained, grieving eyes. Jill, Alicia's young servant, expresses his determination to train in swordsmanship to stand as an equal beside her. Drawing from Alicia's own unconventional logic, he asserts that physical muscle is the foundation of all endeavors and that eating macarons is the key to mental efficiency. While Jill believes these habits will aid his studies, Henry, Alicia's brother, can only laugh at the boy's earnest adoption of his sister's eccentricities. Henry reveals that Alicia's love for macarons is far more than a simple preference. She can maintain absolute concentration for 10 hours straight as long as she has the treats. The sheer intensity of this habit leads Jill to jokingly question if such macarons are even legal. Offering Jill some candy, Henry notes that those who use their heads often crave sweets. He warns Jill not to use Alicia as a standard for his own progress, describing her as a special case, who surpassed all 3 of her brothers in skill by the age of 13. After a grueling practice session that leaves Jill exhausted on the grass, Henry provides water and helps him cool his wrists to prevent injury. Henry points out that Jill lacks natural athletic ability and should focus on light strength training before attempting full sword fighting. As they watch Alicia practice fancy magic in the distance, the conversation shifts to her unexpected altruism. Henry admits he never expected Alicia to earnestly plan improvements for Roanna Village without being asked. He notes that while her eyes may seem cold, she possesses a strong sense of justice that stands in contrast to Liz, whose overt good-naturedness he finds annoying. Henry confesses that he used to ignore such problems because they didn't concern him, but meeting Jill and seeing Alicia's effort has changed his perspective. Jill concludes that regardless of how exceptional Alicia is, there is no special power that can solve everything instantly. They must simply take things one step at a time. Jill vows to become the smartest person in the country to help Alicia, leading Henry to muse that they may need to reconsider the very definition of a villainess. The weight of the prince's constant surveillance finally pressing down on her as she grapples with the unsettling feeling of being watched without her consent. She struggles to find the correct words to bridge the gap between her internal identity as a calculated villainess and the reality of the prince's unexpected attention. Turning toward Prince Duke, Alicia asserts her autonomy, coldly informing him that she never requested his protection and demanding that he cease forcing his unwanted desires and constant observation upon her. Her words strike with the force of a physical blow, leaving the prince visibly shaken and flushed as he absorbs her blunt dismissal of his concern as nothing more than a bothersome intrusion. The tension of the encounter is broken by the distant, heavy tolling of school bells, signaling the start of the academic day. Alicia, accompanied by the young Jill, decides to terminate their current conversation, noting that it is time to attend a special lecture intended for senior students. They walk through the grand, vaulted halls of the academy toward the lecture hall, with Alicia maintaining a composed and regal bearing despite the inner turmoil of her thoughts. Upon reaching the massive wooden doors of the classroom, Alicia pushes them open with a flourish, stepping into a room filled with older students who turn in surprise at her sudden arrival. Standing before the gathered seniors, Alicia announces her intention to join their class effective immediately, her voice carrying a sharp edge of confidence that borders on provocation. The students murmur in disbelief, and even her brother, who is present in the room, questions her motives for such an audacious move. Alicia meets his gaze with a mocking smile, dismissing his disapproval and labeling his shock as despicable. She boldly declares that the curriculum at her own level has become so elementary that it bores her, and she expects the senior year to provide at least a modicum of entertainment for her intellect. The classroom erupts into a sea of indignant whispers as the senior students recoil at her perceived arrogance and condescension. Alicia ignores their hostility, internally acknowledging the lie she just told. In reality, she had to study with desperate intensity just to reach a level where she could feasibly catch up to this advanced material. Amidst the rising resentment, the heroine Liz stands and intervenes, pleading with her classmates to stop their ostracization of Alicia. Liz praises Alicia's excellence and charisma, attempting to soften the atmosphere by suggesting that while Alicia may be harsh, she deserves a place among them. The professor restores order, commanding everyone to take their seats as the lesson begins. During the session, Liz continues her attempts at friendship, expressing her genuine happiness that Alicia has joined the class and remarking on how incredible it is for a 15-year-old to be studying at the senior level. She reassures Alicia that everyone in the class is kind and that she will surely make many friends, But Alicia remains cold and detached, stating firmly that she did not come to the academy to seek companionship. Following the conclusion of the lecture, Prince Duke approaches Alicia in the hallway, his expression solemn and apologetic. He attempts to offer a formal apology for the earlier friction between them, but Liz interrupts the moment, cheerfully suggesting that they all go to the canteen for lunch together. Alicia immediately declines, citing the fact that she is not a member of the student council and suggesting that her presence would be an inconvenience during their scheduled meeting. Liz dismisses these concerns, insisting that she wants the rest of the council to get to know Alicia and expressing a simple desire to share a meal with others. Alicia stares at the heroine, noting how Liz seems to navigate social circles and friendships with an effortless, natural grace. Feeling the pressure of Liz's persistent kindness, Alicia reiterates her stance that they do not need to get along and that the forced expectation of universal friendship is a concept she finds unappealing. She looks Liz directly in the eye and states clearly that she has no desire to be her friend. Liz, however, remains undeterred, explaining that her invitation isn't born from a sense of obligation but from a genuine interest in getting to know Alicia as a person. Internalizing the situation, Alicia realizes that Liz is the quintessential heroine, the type of person who is naturally loved and destined for a prince, and she finds herself still unable to like her. She reflects on the otome game she once played, remembering that in the original story, Prince Duke was never kind to the villainous Alicia. She is deeply unsettled by the affection the prince has shown her in this life, as it deviates from the greatest villainous path she has set for herself. Her goal remains to be the ultimate obstacle in the heroine's path to love and to retire with a noble smile upon her eventual defeat. Alicia retreats to the canteen with Jill, though her appetite has vanished under the weight of her mounting frustrations. Jill observes her silently, noting that this is the first time Alicia has appeared so visibly plagued by doubt. Alicia looks at her reflection in a mirror, admitting to herself that she lacks any talent for romance and finds it impossible to fully understand her own shifting feelings for Prince Duke. She questions if her heart is truly stirred by the prince himself or if she is merely experiencing the excitement of a fan being close to a favorite game character. Despite this confusion, she resolves to remain true to her primary ambition of becoming the ideal villainess. Later, Alicia finds the prince sitting alone in a darkened room and approaches him with a smirk, claiming she came specifically to see him looking hurt and depressed. However, the prince remains surprisingly calm, which Alicia finds disappointing. Dropping her facade for a brief moment, she offers a sincere apology for the cruel manner in which she spoke to him earlier, admitting she was actually glad he had been worried about her. She then shifts back to a position of strength, warning him that she dislikes being watched in secret and tells him that if he wishes to keep an eye on her, he should do so openly. Alicia closes the distance between them, leaning in until she is mere inches from the prince's face. She chides him for staying quiet and tells him it is naive to think someone will understand him without words. She declares that she intends to protect him directly with her own hands rather than being a weak girl who needs a man's protection. She warns the prince and the eavesdropping members of the student council that anyone who underestimates her will live to regret it. With a final apology for the disturbance, she turns on her heel and exits the room. Left behind, Prince Duke watches her go, a determined smile spreading across his face as he resolves to no longer hold back and challenges Alicia to be prepared for what comes next. Duke lets out a rare, genuine laugh that echoes through the grand corridors, a sound so unfamiliar that onlookers frozen in the hallway whisper in disbelief at the sight of the stoic nobleman's transformation. Alicia remains the only person capable of drawing such warmth from him, a fact that does not go unnoticed by those watching from the shadows. Alicia, her face flushed a deep crimson, recoils and shrieks as Duke leans in close, his breath warm against her skin as he whispers directly into her ear. She demands he cease the intimate contact, but Duke simply smirks, his eyes glinting with a newfound assertiveness as he declares he will no longer restrain his actions or his affection. Alicia huffs and turns away, insisting she dislikes being watched from behind and refuses to follow his whims like a common servant, though her racing heart betrays her bravado. Duke counters her protest with a calm, predatory grace, clarifying that his requests are not orders but personal preferences, as he simply enjoys the view of her when she is not hiding behind formal honorifics. Alicia struggles to maintain her composure, stammering that she only uses formal language to avoid being seen as a child who lacks the etiquette to address the royal family. Duke seizes the opportunity to escalate the tension, casually suggesting that if she is truly worried about her status, they should simply finalize their engagement, a proposal that leaves Alicia speechless and trembling. Their private moment is abruptly cut short when Liz, the saint-like heroine, approaches them with a stack of documents, requesting a private word with Duke regarding club activity reports before the student council meeting begins. Duke's expression immediately shifts from playful to icy as he turns toward Liz, his posture stiffening as he prepares to deal with the girl he clearly views as a nuisance. Liz, sensing the coldness, looks down at her papers with a trembling lip, her eyes brimming with unshed tears as she asks if Duke is still harboring anger toward her. She offers a desperate apology, hoping to mend whatever rift remains between them, but Duke dismisses her concerns with a blunt statement that there is nothing to make up for because there was never a connection to begin with. Alicia watches this exchange from the side, marveling at Liz's formidable persistence while noting the deliberate distance Duke maintains. Eventually, Duke grows weary of the circular conversation and declares they are wasting time, signaling his departure for the student council meeting. Alicia bids them a polite farewell, her mind already shifting back to her own internal calculations as she watches them walk away. Deep down, Alicia feels a surge of dark excitement, lamenting that the original game world made the Villainess 5 years younger, yet she celebrates the fact that Liz finally sees her as a genuine rival in love. Alicia grits her teeth and vows to become an even more perfect Villainess than the one depicted in the game, one who truly matches the saint's light with her own shadow. She refuses to settle for an easy victory based on Duke's current favor, believing she still has a long way to go before she can claim the title of the ultimate antagonist. As she prepares to head to class, a nervous young girl with pigtails approaches her, stammering and clutching her hands to her chest as she begs Alicia to follow her. Alicia eyes the girl with suspicion, noting her lack of a name and her refusal to explain the nature of the emergency. When the girl offers nothing but vague apologies and pleas for help, Alicia sharply rebukes her, asking if the girl thinks she is foolish enough to follow a stranger without a straight answer. Alicia turns her back on the crying girl and suggests she take her troubles to a teacher instead, completely unfazed by the public display of distress. Unbeknownst to Alicia, as she walks away, the girl's timid expression vanishes, replaced by a calculating gaze as she clutches a magical recording device and hopes the data she captured is sufficient. Later, Alicia sits in a lecture hall where a professor discusses the history of the .10 disease, a condition once feared as a curse until it was identified as mineral poisoning. The professor explains that the disease causes dark spots to appear across the body, weakening the victim and leading to a high mortality rate. While research is funded nationally, the disease remains a major problem, particularly for people living along the Daigon River due to water pollution caused by the rapid development of the upstream country, Laval. When the professor asks if anyone has heard of a potential cure, a young boy named Jill, Alicia's servant, raises his hand. The other students in the room erupt into whispers, sneering at the audacity of a mere servant daring to speak in a room full of nobles. They mock the idea that Jill could possess any intelligence beyond that of his master, but Jill remains undeterred. He identifies a rare medicinal herb known as Maddie, which reportedly grows on the northern cliffs of Laval and is said to be a special cure for the disease. The professor is visibly impressed, commending Jill for his diligent study and for knowing of a plant that only appears in ancient, obscure documents. Jill humbly thanks the professor, though Alicia notices he had quite the nerve to stand up against the room's collective prejudice. After class, Jill explains to Alicia that he was prepared to speak up because he has witnessed the horrors of the .10 disease firsthand in his home village, where a lack of nutrition and poor sanitation make the illness a death sentence. He expresses a desperate wish to study the Maddie plant here in Roanna, hoping to develop a medicine that could save his people. Alicia listens intently, her mind turning to the political implications of their isolationist policies, as Roanna strictly prohibits travel to and from Laval. She ponders the disadvantage they face in diplomacy and war if they remain behind in intelligence and medical research while Laval rapidly gains strength. Their conversation is interrupted by a messenger who informs Alicia she is being summoned. Upon arriving at the designated location, Alicia finds herself confronted by a girl named Jane and a crowd of angry students. Jane accuses Alicia of bullying her dear friend Marika, the same girl who had approached Alicia earlier that day. Jane rants about Alicia's known grudge against Liz and claims that Alicia lashed out in frustration, taking her anger out on the innocent Marika behind everyone's backs. To Alicia's surprise, Marika produces the magical recording device, playing back the conversation where Alicia had spoken harshly to her and refused to help. The crowd turns on Alicia, hurling insults and demanding she apologize for her brazen and disgusting behavior. Liz appears as well, looking shocked and disappointed, stating that Marika is a shy, gentle girl who would shrivel up under such a strong tone. Alicia, however, does not shrink back. Instead, she smiles broadly, reveling in the fact that everyone truly believes she is the villainess. She notes that Marika's recording has been cleverly edited with earth magic to omit the context of the girl's suspicious behavior. Just as the situation reaches a fever pitch, another student named Carol steps forward, shouting for everyone to wait and questioning the narrative being forced upon them. Carol points out that it seems as though Alicia's guilt was decided from the very start, marking the first time someone has dared to defend the villainess against the mob. In a grand hallway of the academy, the tension reaches a breaking point as a group of students corners Alicia, fueled by accusations of bullying. A girl with a braided hairstyle voices her skepticism, questioning why anyone would doubt Marika's courage for revealing the supposed harassment. She insists that both sides must be heard and that the audio recording provided as evidence needs thorough verification. Beside her, another student pushes further, accusing Alicia of suggesting Marika is a deceiver. Alicia stands firm, her face obscured by an eye patch, offering no immediate defense while a fellow student warns her that a villainess should be grateful for any assistance offered. The crowd grows more aggressive, surrounding Alicia and demanding concrete proof of her innocence. One student sneers, telling her to produce evidence if she truly believes she is being framed. Just as the pressure peaks, a cheerful girl named Mel interjects, flourishing a magical orb with a confident smile. She announces that she holds the necessary evidence right there, catching everyone off guard. Marika, looking distressed, can only watch as Mel presents the glowing artifact to Lady Alicia, asking for her attention while the surrounding students look on in confusion and shock. Mel attempts to lead Alicia away, pleading for her to follow without offering an immediate explanation. Alicia, however, maintains her composure and refuses to move blindly. She questions Mel's identity and the purpose of the request, asserting that she is not foolish enough to follow a stranger without a straight answer. Mel grows increasingly frantic, apologizing and claiming she is in deep trouble, but Alicia remains unmoved, suggesting that if there is a real problem, Mel should consult a teacher instead. Alicia turns to leave, stating her intention to attend her classes, while Mel desperately tries to stop her. As Alicia walks away, Mel activates the magical recording device, filling the hallway with the sound of clicking mechanisms. The playback reveals a conversation that contradicts Marika's previous claims, causing a stir among the onlookers. Mel points out the discrepancy with a playful tone, noting that someone must be lying. She suggests that an earth magic teacher should analyze both recordings to uncover the truth. The realization of the fabrication hits the crowd, and a student named Jane is suddenly implicated. Jane, trembling under the weight of the revelation, confesses that she was the one behind the scheme. She claims she acted under orders and was too frightened to refuse. She admits to wanting an excuse to frame Alicia, despite knowing it was a terrible thing to do. The other students react with a mix of disgust and disbelief, viewing the entire situation as a farce that wasted their time. One student continues to rage, insisting that Alicia insulted Liz Cather and that such rudeness is unforgivable. He declares that since Liz is too benevolent to retaliate, he will judge Alicia in her place. Liz Cather herself steps forward, her eyes filled with tears, and offers a public apology. She takes the blame upon herself, stating she is sad and immature for allowing Jane to act this way on her behalf. Alicia remains cold, telling Liz that she does not need her apology and that she neither accepts nor rejects the logic of the situation. Liz insists that even though she didn't ask for the framing, she won't walk away from the responsibility. The surrounding students rally around Liz, praising her as the most respectable person they know and telling her there is nothing wrong with her. In the aftermath, Mel grabs Alicia's arm with exuberant energy, celebrating the end of the serious talk and insisting they go elsewhere. Jane is left in disgrace, with a student named Carol telling her she no longer deserves to be near Liz after causing such disappointment. Jane collapses in despair, sobbing as the others look on with pity or disdain. Once they are alone, Alicia questions Mel's motives and her true identity. She notes that Mel seemed to know exactly what was going to happen and had recorded the audio while Marika was originally speaking to her. Mel enthusiastically reveals that she is a big fan of Alicia, praising her beauty, her smooth black hair, and her piercing words. She also admits a deep hatred for Liz Cather, describing her as insensitive and someone who boldly intrudes into people's lives under the guise of kindness. Mel views Liz's following as a cult that others only tolerate to maintain peace. Prince Duke appears, interrupting Mel's fawning behavior by placing a firm hand on her head. He checks on Alicia's well-being and introduces Mel as his personal spy and a genius of earth magic. Mel protests her treatment, claiming he is trying to crack her skull, while Duke explains that she is employed by the royal family to act as his eyes and ears at the academy. He had ordered her to shadow Alicia, using her magic to record voices and remain undetected. Duke apologizes for the secrecy, explaining that he didn't want Alicia to feel trapped or have her freedom affected by the knowledge of being watched. Alicia admits she doesn't like being watched without her knowledge but acknowledges that having a spy like Mel could make her more of an accomplice in her pursuit of becoming a villainess. When Mel teases her about her feelings for the Duke, Alicia becomes flustered and quickly makes an excuse to leave, dragging a fellow student with her. As they walk away, they head toward a meeting with Uncle Will, who has gathered the villagers to reveal important information about the past and the future of Roanna. Would you like me to summarize the specific details of the villagers' history next? Alicia and Jill walk through the barren, snow-dusted landscape toward Roanna Village, the very place where Alicia previously underwent the grueling process of transplanting her eye. As they trek across the frozen earth, Jill voices his concern for Uncle Will, wondering how the man has fared in their absence. Alicia reassures him with steady confidence, noting that Will is a resilient soul who dedicated himself to the village even when he was robbed of his sight. She explains that the moment his vision returned, he transformed into a pillar of the community, performing tireless service every single day. Their conversation hangs in the cold air until a tall, imposing figure draped in a heavy traveling cloak emerges from the wintry backdrop. The man stands with a regal bearing that immediately halts the children in their tracks. He sports a dark eye patch over his right eye, a stark contrast to his pale hair and the sharp, dignified lines of his face. Alicia stares at him, her breath hitching as an inexplicable force washes over her. Without a conscious thought, her knees buckle and she sinks into a deep, formal curtsy, her fingers clutching the fabric of her ornate, dark-patterned skirts as they spread across the dirt. The sheer aura radiating from the man overwhelms her. He no longer appears as a simple village resident but carries the weight and presence of a reigning monarch. Jill watches in utter confusion, scratching his head and asking why she is acting so strangely toward someone who is just their Uncle Will. Will gazes down at the kneeling girl and gently chides her, insisting that he does not want her to kneel for him. He maintains a soft, knowing smile, urging her to stop the formal display and act like her usual self. He claims to still be the same normal uncle they have always known, yet Alicia struggles to reconcile this humble statement with the kingly dignity he now exudes. She eventually rises, regaining her composure while acknowledging that a true villainess would never kneel for just anyone. The group is soon joined by Rebecca, who waves energetically as she approaches, apologizing for the delay. Jill breaks the tension by complimenting Will on his new look, noting that the eye patch, crafted specifically for him by the village workshop, suits him perfectly. As they begin to walk together, Rebecca remarks on how much Will has changed, observing that he looks significantly younger and more vibrant than before. Alicia looks at him closely, realizing that while she calls him uncle, he is not actually as old as his previous haggard appearance suggested. Will chuckles at their observations, explaining that he is technically one of the oldest residents in Roanna, which is why everyone simply refers to him as the old man. He admits that he lived much longer than he ever expected, fully believing he would be buried in this village as a nameless exile. Sensing the weight of their curiosity, Will stops and gathers them, his expression turning solemn as he prepares to reveal a truth he has kept hidden for decades. He confesses that he was not born in Roanna Village. Long ago, he served at the royal court, but his life was shattered when he was blinded and exiled as a great sinner. He reveals his true name was Will Seeker, and he admits to being a traitor who once disrespected his sovereign and nearly usurped the throne. He recounts two major mistakes that defined his youth. The first occurred when he was a mere boy, hailed as a genius whose overwhelming hubris eventually cost him everything. The second mistake happened as a young man, when he misjudged what was truly important and abandoned his only brother. Will's mind drifts back several decades to a sunlit palace, where he was the promising first prince of the kingdom of Dulcus. He recalls his young half-brother, Luke Seeker, a cheerful child who would run into his arms with pure, innocent adoration. Will cherished the boy, who was significantly younger and looked up to him as a paragon of wisdom and strength. At the time, Will believed he was destined to be a wise king, not simply because of his birthright, but because he was a true prodigy. He had mastered academics at an unparalleled level and could wield complex magic by the age of 10. He would often hold Luke, promising the boy that while Will ruled, Luke would become the strongest knight to protect him. The political landscape of the palace was complicated by the presence of Queen Julie, the king's second wife and Luke's mother. Though she was reputed to have nothing more than a pretty face and found politics difficult and boring, she was ever present, offering tea and treats while Will assisted his father in administering the kingdom. Will admits that he became far too proud of his own capabilities. Showered with constant praise from the court and confident in his superiority, he felt his half-brother's chances at the throne were non-existent. This arrogance led to a catastrophic magic outburst. Will attempted to skip the fundamental levels of magical training, believing he was an exception to the rules, but the resulting surge of energy caused extensive damage and injuries. In the aftermath of the disaster, Will paid a heavy price. He lost his magic entirely. In a country where nobility is defined by magical prowess, losing one's power often meant being stripped of status. Will spiraled into despair, surrounded by empty bottles as he mourned his shortened future. His father, the king, fell ill shortly after, his heart broken by the tragedy. It was during this dark time that young Luke stepped forward, kneeling by his brother's side and vowing to study hard to become a king Will could trust. Despite the sudden weight of responsibility, Luke desperately applied himself to learning politics so he could support the brother he still loved. Because of Will's royal bloodline and his past achievements, he was allowed to remain in the palace as Luke's primary aide once the boy was crowned at the age of 17. Will initially felt fulfilled, believing that supporting his brother was his life's new purpose. He had no lingering attachment to the throne and cared only for the growth of the nation. However, Luke was an inexperienced politician facing harsh criticisms from the court. While Luke acted as if the pressure didn't bother him, his internal impatience grew stronger by the day. The brothers' relationship began to fray under the influence of Queen Julie. When Luke struggled with policy proposals that were criticized for favoring the wealthy, he felt inferior to Will's natural talent. Queen Julie would comfort her son, subtly planting seeds of resentment by pointing out how outstanding Will was and how everyone else looked like fools by comparison. She whispered that if it weren't for the accident, Will would be on the throne, and that he likely viewed Luke as a mere puppet king. Luke, seeking affirmation, leaned into his mother's support while Will remained focused on large-scale reforms to dismantle the power of the conservative aristocracy. Will was so consumed by his work that he failed to reassure his brother or notice the trap being set around him. One night, he was taken into custody on suspicion of plotting to usurp the throne. Evidence and testimony had been gathered in secret, and by the time Will realized the depth of the conspiracy, it was too late. In the throne room, a cold and distant Luke confronted him, accusing Will of seeing him as an obstacle and a manipulatable decoration. Will realized with horror that his belief in their mutual understanding had been a fatal error. Queen Julie watched from behind her fan, her eyes gleaming with triumph as she mocked Will's supposed attachment to the throne. Will and his aides were removed from the court, narrowly escaping with their lives after a lost political battle. Despite the betrayal, Will's final memory of that time is of himself shouting his innocence to the end, desperate for his brother to know that he never once sought to deprive him of his crown. Will Seeker concludes the harrowing tale of his past, revealing that his exile to Roanna village was accompanied by the cruel act of being stripped of his eyesight. Despite this, he harbors no resentment toward his brother, King Luke, acknowledging that Queen Julie was simply far more skilled at manipulating the hearts of others. While those listening, including Rebecca, are moved to tears and question the king's judgment, Will clarifies that he shares this history not to seek pity, but because Roanna village may soon be liberated. The revelation of potential freedom sends shockwaves through the group. While some villagers rejoice at the prospect of leaving, Will insists that when the village is freed, he wishes to be treated as a criminal. This selfless declaration causes an immediate uproar. The villagers, who view him as a mentor and grandpa, vehemently reject the idea of him being an infamous traitor. Alicia, observing the situation with her characteristic pragmatism, notes that while the scenario of a tragic genius plotting to usurp the throne from a mediocre younger brother is a convincing narrative, it is difficult to prove one's true desires when a malicious actor is framing the events. She suggests that Will should eventually have an honest conversation with the king, as Luke might also harbor regrets regarding the exile. Later, Alicia reflects on the situation at the palace alongside Prince Duke. Duke reveals he is fully aware of his uncle's predicament and that Alicia's previous village reform proposals were the catalyst for the current momentum. He explains that support for Roanna is growing, but they must keep Will's survival a secret. If the opposition learns the great sinner still lives before reforms are finalized, they will surely block them. Duke admits his personal involvement stems from childhood doubts about the country's penal system and a secret desire to make Alicia happy. He confesses that watching her radiant freedom from the stifling palace saved him, and he urges her to focus on her current role while he handles the political maneuvering. The scene shifts back to the Magic Academy, where Liz Seraph is hosting a large tea party to celebrate Eric's birthday. Alicia attends and immediately senses the underlying tension. A girl named Meg offers Liz homemade macarons, but Liz insists on sharing them with everyone. Alicia observes Meg badmouthing Liz behind her back, accusing the commoner of using unsavory methods to join the student council. When Alicia confronts Meg and tells her to speak her grievances directly rather than gossiping in private, Eric leaps to Meg's defense, accusing Alicia of making up lies to humiliate his fiancée. The confrontation is interrupted by Lord Finn, who confirms that Alicia is telling the truth and that he witnessed Meg's duplicity. As Meg breaks down, true to her heroine nature, eats the macarons anyway, declaring them delicious and forgiving Meg. Liz claims she trusts the bond of their friendship, a display of innocence that leaves Alicia bewildered. However, the conversation takes a dark turn when Eric mentions that Liz once protected the academy from a wolf attack. Alicia is instantly struck by a realization: wolves, in this world, are classified as monsters, notably larger and more ferocious than ordinary animals. Their mere appearance is a major incident, yet Liz claims they left without harming anyone. Alicia recalls that in the original game, the Villainess tried to use wolves to attack the heroine, only for them to turn on the Villainess. As she processes that Dulcus has no natural wolf habitats and that someone must have the ability to control them, Alicia fears that something terrible is happening in the background of this reality that differs from the programmed game world.